Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the 2022 Neighbourhood Summit. My name is Sarah Faulkner and I'm your host for today's Neighbourhood Summit, as well as the project lead for the Neighbourhood Circles project. Before I get too far into today's event, I would like to take a moment to introduce the Right Honourable Stephen Marshall, Premier of South Australia, who will officially open the 2022 Neighbourhood Summit.
Good morning everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Neighbourhood Summit as part of the Inclusive Neighbourhoods project. Through the Department of Premier and Cabinet and the Julia Farr MS McLeod Benevolent Fund, the Inclusive Neighbourhoods project was funded in 2020 to examine how neighbourhood circles of support can improve social connectedness and individual wellbeing. A key imperative for this project was the recognition that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated feelings of isolation and loneliness experienced by many people in our community. Community connection also has a critical role to play in safeguarding the most vulnerable people in our neighbourhoods. This Neighbourhood Summit will showcase several great local initiatives that are providing safe spaces for people to connect and grow their neighbourhood connections. Today's summit also provides an opportunity to hear from some outstanding South Australian neighbourhood champions, including garden consultant and presenter Sophie Thompson. A comprehensive mapping report is also being launched today, highlighting some of the key findings of the project, which will help us better understand how to build and sustain inclusive neighbourhoods. Thank you for the valuable work that you're doing to help improve our neighbourhoods now and into the future. Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed the speech included with the closed captions from the Premier of South Australia, and we thank him for joining us. Now, in the meantime, I'd like to do a quick acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to first acknowledge traditional land that we're meeting on today is the lands of the Kaurna people, and to pay their respects to elders both past, present and emerging. For everyone who might be joining us from different parts of the country today, please make your own acknowledgements to the traditional owners of the land that you're meeting on and pay your respects in the way that you see fit. We'd like to move on as well to provide a little introduction to the Neighbourhood Circles project. And so I would like to introduce Robbie Williams, CEO of Julia Farr Purple Orange. Robbie will provide some more history and context to the Inclusive Neighbourhoods Initiative, which the Neighbourhood Circles project is a part. Julia Farr Purple Orange have been a really key ally for the Neighbourhood Circles project, and we'd like to take the moment to thank them for generously supporting us for this project, as well as supporting the running of the summit today. So thank you very much to Robbie, and please take it away whenever it's ready.
Since 2006, JFA Purple Orange has worked in policy research and development to find ways to advance the life chances of people living with disability and their families. Central to this is the vision of people living with disability taking up authentic valued membership of mainstream community life. At Purple Orange, we've been thinking for some time about the nature of inclusive neighbourhoods. And by this, we mean how everyone in the community feels welcome and that they belong. Over the years, we've supported a number of initiatives through our philanthropy arm. And this has included a model called Circles of Support, brought to South Australia many years ago by local disability agency Community Living Project, as a way to build a posse around a person to assist their vision building, support their decision making, and their connection to mainstream community life. When the pandemic first kicked in 2020, Chief Psychiatrist John Brayley contacted us to explore whether the Circles model might be applied on a larger scale for South Australians at risk of isolation and disconnection because of the pandemic. We spoke with Prue Gorman and Jane Barrett at Community Living Project about this, and we also spoke with Ross Womersley at Social Services Peakbody SACOS. And with John Brayley, they and us became the steering group to explore what might be possible. The difficulty was in trying to translate a resource-intensive model like Circles of Support into a low-cost, large-scale model. We noticed how, as the pandemic grew, there were random acts of kindness being reported, where local people reached out to others in their local neighbourhood. We wondered if there was a way to systemically tap into this kindness with greater intentionality across South Australian communities. The revelations of the circumstances of the death of Anne-Marie Smith, who lived in an ordinary house in an ordinary street but was largely unconnected with other local people in her neighbourhood, also made us wonder if there was a way to unlock the way neighbours can give themselves permission to reach out. But there was a problem. We wanted to keep this natural and local and organic, which means not seeking security clearances because folk don't need to be police checked to be our neighbours. But taking this approach might also attract people whose intentions might not be honourable or wholesome. After a lot of thinking and talking, the idea emerged from the steering group that instead of trying to build a circle around a vulnerable person, it would be better to identify where neighbourhood networks already exist in community life that operate like circles. They have habits of welcome, of creating a sense of belonging, and where you don't need resources or special skills to participate. Using the term neighbourhood circles to describe such initiatives, which might include community gardens, community cafes, community sheds, outdoor activity groups, and the like, the steering group wanted to understand the features and character of these neighbourhood circles and whether they could extend their reach to local people at greater risk of isolation and marginalisation. The steering group prepared a proposal for the Department of Premier and Cabinet and won a grant. And our philanthropy arm matched that grant, which created an 18-month resource to investigate these matters. Based on their experience with circles and their commitment to values-based inclusion, Community Living Project were invited to host the project. Throughout 2021 and into 2022, Sarah Faulkner has been exploring and documenting a rich seam of initiatives in the Greater Adelaide area, locally created, locally sustained, and with habits of welcome and inclusion. Today's event is auspicious. It comprises local leaders, initiators, who've created and sustained networks of shared interest and connection, where anyone can find a welcome regardless of their background or circumstance. Our hope is that this place today is where there can be good ideas and good practice shared, and where we can find ways to learn together and act together for inclusive neighbourhoods, where people can find welcome, connection, and belonging.
Thank you very much, Robbie, for those words of welcome. And apologies again that we're doing things a little bit round robin here today, but I hope that the message is clear about what the Neighbourhood Circles project is hoping to achieve, as well as the aim for today's summit, which is really to share stories of inclusion, to bring together some neighbourhood champions, to launch the mapping reports that we've worked so tirelessly on these past 12 months, as well as to help encourage you to think about what inclusion and belonging might look like in your communities. So the big thing for the Neighbourhood Circles project, the reasons why we started this project, was that the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the desire for and the need for a number of people within our neighbourhoods to connect to one another. However, it also highlighted some of the vulnerabilities in our neighbourhood, particularly for people who are more marginalised or isolated. The relationships we build in our neighbourhood can provide really important sources of support and safeguarding for those who are at greater risk of being isolated or marginalised. However, the inclusion of people within our neighbourhoods doesn't just happen. Often people living with a disability or a mental illness, other vulnerability, can often live increasingly segregated or isolated lives. Barriers to distance, transport, literacy, access to information, informal and formal supports can further isolate people that might already be isolated. So it's unfortunate because inclusion does not just happen within our neighbourhoods, that's why this project matters. So across the 12-month period, I want to highlight a key purpose of the project and some different factors of the research that we've done. So there's 4 phases of the project we focused on: explore, amplify, replicate, advocate, and sustain. And across these 4 phases, a number of key outcomes have come in the past 12 months. So our big project outcome that's come thus far is first, Julia Farr Purple Orange have created what's called an inclusive neighbourhoods website that contains helpful resources, stories, and case studies that can support building of inclusive neighbourhoods across Adelaide. So we'd like to share the link for this in the chat in a moment. There is also a short video on the website that we'd like you to take care to look at, to view, if you have the time. And also a key aspect of the website, a key outcome, are 2 neighbourhood mapping reports, which the Premier highlighted in his opening today. We are really proud of these reports, and we hope that they highlight some really key findings that we've had over the past 12 months. So there's parts 1 and parts 2. Part 1, a space at the heart of our community, focused on different types of neighbourhood initiatives that exist around Adelaide region and pays particular attention to how they are formed, what engenders a sense of belonging in them, as well as what barriers exist to their inclusion. So you'll be able to find copies, electronic copies of the report on the Neighbourhood Inclusive website, as well as we will email them to all participants. Within this report, I had the privilege of being able to speak to a range of people from a variety of lived experiences, including those living with a disability, mental illness, or other vulnerability. And they help to inform a variety of the barriers that they might face in engaging with their local neighbourhood and communities. So some of these barriers include spatial barriers, such as time of day, location, accessibility, safety, and transport, while others is about how information is shared, such as the limitations in digital literacy, as well as information access, or an overdependence on word of mouth. Part 1 also includes some really lovely case study examples of some particularly great initiatives that exist across the Adelaide area, interviews with some neighbourhood champions, as well as a list of helpful resources. Following on from Part 1, because there's just too much out there in a neighbourhood to limit it to just one part, is Part 2, Inclusion is Everyone's Responsibility. And within this, it really highlights strategies of what it might take to address some of the barriers to inclusivity and accessibility within our neighbourhoods. This part highlights some of the tensions surrounding engaging with our neighbours and neighbourhoods, particularly surrounding notions of risk and safety. However, it highlights the importance of recognising our neighbourhoods as a way to safeguard people's vulnerabilities and to help keep them safe into the future. This document doesn't aim to provide all the answers to inclusion. However, it does hope to provide a snapshot to the variety of different ways that neighbourhood groups, everyday community members, families, loved ones, and key support allies can help address some of the barriers to inclusivity and accessibility moving forward. Some of these strategies are also aimed at those who might be paid or unpaid support roles, or someone who might be more vulnerable, which highlights a critical role that you can play to bridge barriers to inclusion and accessibility. This report also includes a number of case study examples, interviews with a series of neighbourhood champions, as well as a list of resources that we hope may help you in your journey to inclusion. Another key outcome of the project comes with some of the comes with a little PDF printout poster that we created called Inclusion Starts With Me. And so within this poster, you'll find a number of different little tips and strategies around inclusion and accessibility. This will also be available on the Inclusive Neighbourhoods website and something that we can email to all participants at a later date. While there's no answer or no one-size-fits-all approach to inclusion, we hope that this poster kind of provides a few key tips and strategies that you can think about in your day-to-day. So you can print that poster off, you can put it up in your office or in your home or on your fridge or anywhere that you think might be helpful to remind you of some of those strategies. There's also some pocket guides which are available, and you can find them here. Well, I can share them with you. We have lots of hard copies of the pocket guides available. They're small, they're kind of like a nice little bookmark that you can put in. They're not great for the fine print, but they're really good just to kind of keep somewhere as little key reminders to help with your journey. So if you do want any hard copies, we do have a number of hard copies of these available. We can also make them available to you at a later date. And while the mapping documents are not available currently in hard copy, we have them, they're all available in electronic. We will be printing off a number of copies that people can access at a later date. So if you do want a hard copy printout, please let us know and get in touch. And hopefully we'll be able to connect with you. Another really important key output is a survey that we're going to be putting to all the participants throughout today. We'll be putting the link into the chat, and as well as at the beginning and as well as the end of the day. And so we ask you to kind of explore some of these questions throughout the day if you want, or you can wait until the end. There are just 4 key questions that we're looking at to be answered and explored, and you can take as long or as short as you want to respond to them. This survey is totally anonymous, But if you do want your name or affiliation, then feel free to let us know in the comment box. The survey will be left open for 2 weeks following the summit, and we encourage it to be shared with any friends or colleagues, if they want to provide their input. It is really important to us for you to fill out the survey because it's going to help guide the future of the project and what you might need moving into the future. So without further ado, I'd like to move on to our first panel session of the day. Thank you very much, everyone.
So hello, everyone, and welcome to the first panel session of the Neighbourhood Summit, sharing stories of neighbourhood inclusion. What might it take? For those who are just joining us, my name is Sarah Faulkner, and I'm the project lead for the Neighbourhood Circles project, as well as your host for the next 2 panel sessions. Today, we have the privilege of being joined by 3 wonderful neighbourhood champions who are going to share their own stories of neighbourliness, belonging, and inclusion. We are joined today by Barry Sherwell of Offingham Greening, Jody Mowat of the Little Library on Lloyd Street, and Anna-Maine Van Marlen from the Pear neighbourhood node. So for today's panel session, I'll be asking a series of questions to our panelists about their respective neighbourhood initiatives. While we cannot take any live questions at this time, feel free to put any comments or questions into the chat box, and we will try to address them at a later date. Please also get in touch with us if you'd like to be connected to one of our panelists and hear more of their story. If you're a social media user, please feel free to use the hashtags #NeighbourhoodSummit, #Adelaide2022 when posting about today's event. But before we get too far in today's session, I'd like to first give the panelists a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and say a few words about the initiative they are part of. So let's kick things off with you first, Barry. Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Barry Sherwell, and I'm from Offingham Greening. We don't really have titles in our group, but I guess if I have to have one, I'd be the facilitator. And Offingham Greening is a community type garden, but it's not a typical food production garden. It's what we call it a bee, bird and butterfly garden. So it's a beautiful, lovely, peaceful place that hopefully attracts lots of pollinators, bees and butterflies and so forth.
Wonderful, thank you. Now I will turn it to you, Anna-Maine.
So my name is Anna-Maine Van Marlen. I work for the Pear neighbourhood node down in Alberton. I'm the neighbourhood engagement person, and we are a small for-profit organisation that currently run a coffee house called the Pear. And for the last 4 years, I have been working there to basically engage neighbours to connect with each other through coffee, through activities, through events, through placemaking, and to support people to what we call do neighbourhood.
Wonderful, thank you, Anna-Maine. Now, last but not least, Jody. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Jody, and one of the jobs I have in my neighbourhood is curating a little street library out the front of my house. It's called the Little Library on Lloyd Street, which is wonderful alliteration. I really enjoy. And through that, I've got 2 upcycled fridges now that have books in them that people can borrow, swap, or take home forever if they really, really love them. And also through that, I've connected with my neighbours. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jody. And thank you everyone for your wonderful introductions. I'm very, very excited to be here speaking with you, all 3 of you today. Thank you again for taking the time to answer some questions for our summit on your neighbourhood initiatives. So the first question I actually have is for Anna-Maine at the Pear. I'm just going to kind of jump right into it. And it's a bit of a 2-part question for you, Anna-Maine. We've spoken before about how the Pear is kind of more than just a cafe, and how you host a number of different types of neighbourhood projects and events. So firstly, can you give us a little history behind the Pear neighbourhood node and why it started? And also, in hosting all these different events, what does the Pear see as its primary role in the Alberton community, and why it does the different things to bring neighbours together?
Well, I think it makes sense that you're asking those 2 questions together because they're very closely related. The Pear came about from the realisation that there was very little communication between direct neighbours. The people who own the Pear, Yost and Christie, live in a beautiful shop front in Alberton, right outside of Alberton Railway Station. And probably about 5 years ago, the neighbour across the road went to hospital and didn't come back. And it wasn't for another 6 weeks that Christie and Yost found out that he had not come back. Which was a bit of a slap in the face of realising that there was so little contact between the neighbours, that nobody had told them that this was what had happened. And they put their heads together and said, we really want that to change. And we already have an existing shop front. Why don't we open that space up to the community? And at that stage, they did not really know what that would look like. So what they did was they organised a number of community meetings. They letterbox dropped and they door knocked and asked people to join these meetings to talk about what they could do with this space. And people unanimously said they wanted coffee. And I think to answer the second question, that the Pear as a cafe or as a coffee house came about from a need and a desire for more social connection and cohesion within the neighbourhood. And as such, the way that the Pear came about was very intentionally focused on that. So from the beginning, Christie and Yost hired me to think about how we could do that, how we could create a space that was open to everyone, welcoming to everyone, and that would open up different possibilities for people to engage with each other and with their neighbourhood in a different way. And yeah, that's how we just, we opened our doors with some government support and with the support of ECH, which is a South Australian aged care provider who recognised that same need for social connection to enable older people to live independently for longer, especially in their own homes. And yes, thus we embarked on a journey of finding out what the people in our neighbourhood are interested in, what things they have to offer other people, and how we can bring them together.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Anna. And I know that I've seen how many events the Pear hosts throughout the year, so it'd be hard to kind of get it all fit into this one time. But if people are interested in seeing more of the events, I guess you're following your Facebook and seeing your website just to see all the diverse events that you've hosted. It's fantastic. Thank you. I kind of have a real similar question for you, Jody. So the little library on Lloyd Street is a very active street library. I remember the first time I saw it, you were hosting a Valentine's Day event around the library. The library itself was hosting a Valentine's Day event. And so there seems to be lots of different things around the library that you initiate. So can you give us a little history behind the little library as well and why it started? And I guess, again, a bit around the role that the library plays in your neighbourhood and the different things that it does to bring neighbours together.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, the little library started because I did a community leadership course through the City of Marion. And while I'm in the City of Mitcham, that program was open to anybody who works, lives and plays in the City of Marion. You just had to apply. And through that program, they support people to get programs up and running and taught all of us a lot of amazing things and just recognise that there's leaders in community in all shapes and sizes. So through that, I discovered that I'd really, really like to do a street library and wasn't sort of sure how to go about that. And my dad offered me a little fridge freezer that had stopped working. And so painted that up, stuck it out the front, filled it full of books and said, I'm open. And off we went. Very organic, not a lot of planning involved, a lot of anxiety because I wanted it to be perfect, but you don't need to be perfect to get your project started. So it's out there now, this yellow box. We expanded recently into a second yellow box because we wanted to put a children's library out there because we realised we're getting a lot of kids' books. And it is an all ages gig. So we get, you know, toddlers right up to, I don't know what age, but it starts with little kids and goes from there. So I guess the role that it plays in the neighbourhood, or what I envisioned it to play, was to bring neighbours together. It was launched the February of 2020. So just when COVID was this thing that was this problem overseas, but not a big deal kind of thing. And then it did become a big deal here, but street libraries are one of those things that when people are out on their walks, they have access to it. It's also outdoors. So it's just about bringing neighbours together. The other thing is I sometimes have produce or plants that go along with that, as well as part of the Grow Free community. So I have a verge garden out the front as well, and a bit like Barry, I'm a little bit obsessed with bees and birds and butterflies. So the combination of being out the front to talk birds, books, bees, butterflies, gardens, somebody is interested in one of those things generally. So it was about getting people together and talking about those things. And I'm glad you brought up the Valentine's Day event, because Valentine's Day is also Love Your Library Day. So love your local street library, love your local public library, whatever, love your school library, whatever library you have access to, give them lots of love and use them, because they're generally full of people that they love books, but they love community even more.
That's so lovely. I didn't know that about Valentine's Day. I think that's a much better way of looking at the 14th of February into the future. So thank you. Oh, lovely. So thank you, and Jody, and now Barry, I think you kind of know where I'm going with this, with the question I'm going to ask. So the Offingham Greening is a relatively new street garden in your neighborhood, but it has done just a wonderful job of introducing neighbors to one another. And I had the privilege of being able to go by and see what you've done. So first, can you give the people who are viewing this a little bit of history behind why the Offingham started, and also a bit of the role that the garden has played in your neighborhood, and you know what it's done to bring you and your neighbors together.
Thanks, Sarah. Offingham Greening really started, I guess, as a beautification program, because when I retired, I got the opportunity to act on something that I'd thought about for a long time, about how ugly the entrance to our little suburb was. And so I spoke with council to get permission, and then we letterboxed 60 or 70 houses nearby and said, you know, our plan is to develop this garden in our community. Would you like to be involved? And it was a very welcoming sort of invitation to come along to the garden. And one of the things that struck us is that soon after we'd started, and we got a great response to that, people ringing and sending emails and coming along to our first working bee, which was only in April last year. And it was very obvious that people were really yearning for this sense of connection and involvement and contact with people. And it was, you know, right in the middle of COVID-19. And it became very clear that very few people in the neighbourhood knew each other, very, very few. And at one of our working bees, we discovered that there were two members of the fire brigade who knew each other a little bit, but didn't realise they lived 20 metres from each other in parallel streets. And they met at the working bee, and so they immediately connected. And that's just a simple, I guess, example of how it's worked. We had another neighbour who'd lived in the area for some, I suppose it was 15 years or so, and didn't know one other person, which is quite extraordinary to think about it, 15 years. And it was only when she popped across, when a couple of us were working, we were laying some irrigation, some water irrigation piping, And we got chatting, and she's been coming along to our working bees now, and is gradually starting to get to know her neighbours. The other thing about one other thing about the garden is it's an intergenerational garden. So we have people from about 4 through to their 70s. I won't tell you who's one of the ones in the 70s, but so there is that wide range of people who love getting together and being together. And I know those older ones of the group really do enjoy the company of the little ones. It's also had a marked impact on the mental health of those people who are involved. It's extraordinary once you get to working bees or get-togethers and we start talking, and it's amazing how many of us in that group have had a mental health issue, be it anxiety or depression or something more severe. And so it's just been a wonderful opportunity for people to get to know each other, to feel accepted, to feel valued, and that's what happened. And one of the lovely people who works for Charles Sturt Council, Janet Willoughby, once we were chatting, and she was saying she reckons that community gardens like ours and others, and there's 30 or more in the council area, they're probably only about 30% of value is in the garden, and 70% of the value would be in the people and what it does for people in the garden. So that's a story that's shared not just by what happens in our garden, it's shared across gardens right across the municipality.
That is so wonderful, Barry. And I'm going to hold on to what you said about Janet, the percentage 30-70, because that's a wonderful way of looking at it. But thank you. These stories are so wonderful, and they remind me what a woman called Jan Kruger calls, big little roles of things in our neighborhood. So the power of little things that people do to bring each other together. So thank you. Now I guess we'll go back to you, Anna Main, because I have a bit of a question around the neighborhood node and around keeping people safe. So one thing is around safety and the safety aspect of why the Pear started. How has the Pear changed the nature of relationships between people in Alberton? So particularly around what has it done potentially to make people safer? So do you have any personal stories or examples that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When we started in January 2018, and in November that year, we put out a small neighbourhood survey about how people were feeling about connections in their neighbourhood. And we actually asked them, how do you feel about your safety since the Pear has opened? And I reckon about between 85 and 90% of people who filled out that survey said that they felt safer since we opened, even though we were only open till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but people said they felt safer at night just knowing that there was something there. But also by default, when you have more connections in your neighbourhood and you are not only able to knock on your neighbour's door and say, I don't feel safe, or there's something going on, or I need to talk to someone. That's one thing, but being able to walk around your neighbourhood and run into people that you know really changes the way that you experience public life in the area that you live in. So in safety, in that sense, I think it's tremendously changed for people. I also think of safety in a different way, in the sense that it's about accessibility, and it's about inclusion, and it's about creating a space for marginalised groups of people to know that they're safe, and there is that there are things in place that we do to make sure that they are safe. And there's, for example, really small thing, but we have a little sticker on a few stickers on our window that one of them says we have a gender neutral toilet, and another is a sign of respect that acknowledges and pays respect to the traditional owners of the land upon we work and live. And we have a ramp and we have an accessible toilet, and we make sure that our activities are free and they're easy to access. There's no barriers for anyone to be able to join them. When people walk in, we make them feel welcome. We get to know them. We get to know their name. We connect them with other people, and that's really, there's a real sense of increased safety and a sense of responsibility that we're all part of creating that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna Main. It is really powerful, the knowing your neighbors, the things that can happen from just being able to knock on the neighbor's door. So, and I think the Neighborhood Notice done a really wonderful job of doing that, connecting people together and providing a space for people to feel safe and come together. So thank you. Now, Jody, my question next for you is a little bit similar. It's around the role of the little library and how it has brought people in your neighborhood together. So, you know, whether or not it has changed the relationship of neighbors in your street, or if at all, and even in the relationship that you hold with others in the area. And so I was wondering if you had any stories or examples about you'd like to share about that.
Yeah, so I've lived in this area since the late 90s, and sort of knew a few people, but not really well. And I felt a need to connect with my neighbours more. So obviously putting something out on the curb that's a conversation starter means that you get to chat to people that you might not ordinarily do so. It's an icebreaker. You know, you might find yourself talking about books or plants or butterflies, and next minute you may have been talking to that person for a half an hour. Alternatively, it's I'm naturally introverted and quite anxious. And so it's also a really quiet space that if you just want to pass by and be part of something special, but very quietly just do it in your own way, you can do that and you're not bothered either. So in that way, it's really good. The other thing I've tried to do is hold some events every now and again. Last year, we were lucky enough to hold a Neighbour Day barbecue. Mitcham Council were giving out prizes and we won a little package, and basically they funded us being able to have a little barbecue here. And that was a lot of fun. And just wheeling out the barbie out into the front yard and hanging out with your friends is great. And that brought people from around the local area and a little bit further. So that was really, really lovely. I do think that it's hard for people to connect more. Kids are heading off to all sorts of different schools, so they might not be just being able to meet each other through their local primary school anymore. A lot of families are, in paid work all over the place. So it can be really hard to make time for those neighbourhood connections because you're just busy living. You're not, you're a great person, you're outgoing or whatever, but you might not just have the time to say g'day to your neighbours. And I just found that this was a way that people could give themselves the time to stop. And it's been lovely. I've had little notes left for me from little kids right through to grown-ups. I had a jar of jam left just before Christmas, which was just like me doing weepy happy cries going, oh yay, people like this thing. It's just lots of fun connecting with people all the time. And I 110% agree with Barry on the mental health side of things as well. Again, particularly through COVID, it is still difficult for a lot of people. And now we might not be heading out to the office anymore, but we're in our homes, but we're still working just as much. Anyway. it's good fun. I love it. It's the best job in the world.
That is wonderful, Jodie. Filling me with all kinds of wonderful feelings. Thank you. And you mentioned that you were an introvert. It's actually amazing how many people I've met over this neighborhood project who was prescribed as being introverted, but have put themselves out there to connect to their neighbors. And so, yeah, it's wonderful that you've done that. So thank you. Now, Barry, I have a similar question for you as well. I'm really not bucking a good trend here, but it's really around, you did talk a little bit around the Offingham Garden and how it's kind of brought some neighbours together, but I'd love to hear a bit more on the role that it's played in even your own life, and how it's changed, the presence of the garden has changed people's lives in the community. Any personal stories that you're willing to share around that as well?
Look, I think the obvious response initially is to say that people over what's almost 12 months, 10 months or so, generally speaking, people are far less isolated. That's been partly through formal things like sending out a monthly newsletter and follow up and having a large email group of about 40 people. We also have a Facebook group for Offingham Greening, and there's about 60 people on that. So we're constantly sharing photos and stories and questions and so forth to our members about all of that sort of stuff. A couple of stories. Well, I tell this one with permission. And it concerns my good friend and now colleague in the garden, Angie. Angie came to our first working bee, and I think you've met Angie, Sarah. At the first working bee, Angie came for 5 minutes maximum, and there was a good attendance at that day, but she just had to go, and so she just excused herself, and she just found it too off-putting to be surrounded by that many people. Subsequent to that, Angie became involved in some less structured and formal activities in the garden, so just with 1 or 2 people, and got involved. And over time, it's just been absolute magic to watch our dear Angie blossom. Angie is now, would have the highest attendance rate of anybody, and is involved lots and lots of times outside of formal working bees. She's got involved in mosaic work, has just finished a mosaic bee watering spot for our native bees at our bee hotel. And, you know, again, with Angie's permission, I can say that she has just grown and blossomed, and she's just going from strength to strength. And I'm thinking, you know, look out, what's happened here and what sort of person are we going to see, because she's just taken a new lease of life. Can I also say that that applies to me too? I've had chronic depression for many, many years. And for me, the garden in itself, but also the garden with its activity and meeting lots of other people has been just wonderful for me too. Perhaps one other quick story, if we've got time, Sarah. One of the frustrations with our garden, because we have a lot of paths through the garden, that these paths made of sawdust just meander through the garden. And it's just so relaxing to meander through there. But there's a woman in our street who is wheelchair bound, and that's not something she can participate in. So she can go along the footpath and have a look, but can't use these pathways in between. Just excuse me for a minute. So it's a frustration that she can't become fully involved in our garden as it's set up at the moment. So what's happened is that we've actually taken the garden to her place. And so from a bare front yard, she now has a variety of plants in her garden, and it's mulched and it's growing beautifully. And this particular neighbour can get out there every day or two and just make sure that she waters it. And so, frustrating in not being able to involve her fully at this stage in our garden, we've taken a bit of the garden to her, which has been lovely. So they're just, I guess, some of the stories that that come out of our short 10 months so far.
Well, Barry, thank you so much. That's wonderful. I could listen to these stories all day, and just how, you know, you bent over backwards to support another neighbor to feel a bit more included when the spatial barriers of the garden itself prevented it at that time. I think that's really wonderful as neighbors to do that. So thank you for sharing your story and Angie's story as well. Angie also has a beautiful backyard garden I know that she's been working on now since Offingham. So love to see it in another 12 months time. Now I could listen to these stories all day, but I'm afraid we are rather pressed for time. We're kind of wrapping up to the end of this session, but I'd love to ask one final question to all of the panelists here today. And that's really just kind of, what is one lesson, story, or key piece of advice about what you do or your initiative in the neighborhood that you might like to share with others who might be thinking about connecting more to people in their neighborhood, including other vulnerable people who might live there? And, you know, what might it take? So I'd like to start with you, Anna Main, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing. I think the one thing that I would say is just do it. Don't doubt yourself, and make sure that the things that you do have a very low threshold for people joining in. So make it as small and as easy as possible, and make sure that there's a variety of ways that people can contribute and feel part of the thing that you're doing. And that means thinking about accessibility. It means thinking about the cost of it. It means thinking about the time of day and what day of the week you're doing them. But create opportunities for people to do something nice for each other, because that is what makes people feel connected. And yeah, I can give you 100 of really small examples of this. So please, if you're interested in all those things, come and reach out and come and talk to us, because it's it's just so valuable to see what happens when you do that.
Thank you, Anna Main. If I didn't know any better, I thought that you would have already read our neighborhood mapping reports with some of the responses you just gave. And I do encourage anyone who does want to speak, don't just reach out to Anna Main if you can. Go by the Pear and actually grab a cup of coffee and go there, because everyone there, I think, is up for a chat and a conversation, so you won't go astray. No, thank you. Now, your turn, Jody. So any key lesson, story, or piece of advice that you'd like to share?
I would just like to say 100% what Anna Main said as well. I'm just sitting here going, yes, yes, yes. I wore my little badge today to remind myself to say this, but go with your heart. Don't overthink it too much. I'd also say make sure you've got some scope and what you're capable of doing as well. So I have a personality that I can think of something as I'm just going to do a little library, and next minute I've got this huge task that I need to do, and then I feel completely overwhelmed by it and wonder how the heck I got in this mess. So making sure that whatever I commit to is within my scope. And also I think that the smallest of things can make the biggest of differences. And it will do a lot for you. It will do a lot for your community. But yeah, go with your heart, go with your gut. Don't overthink it, and make sure that it's something that's within your scope that you can manage, because you'll often find that what you can manage, other people can later on add to as well. And you don't have to be the person that does all of the things. There'll be people that will come out and help you. yeah, so just go for it, just do it.
That's fantastic, Jodie. Thank you. And the heart, yeah, perfect timing as well for love, you know.
Mirror image.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful. Now, again, last but not least, Barry, love to hear if you have anything else to add to the conversation today or any advice.
Well, yes, you're asking for one key thing or one bit of advice. That's really tricky, but I guess some of those essential things that we're all trying to create is building a sense of safety and acceptance and kindness. And I guess when we have so many people coming along to a working bee, what we're looking to do more and more is to provide a whole range of activities that people can choose from that suits their interest or energy level or confidence or whatever, so they can choose something. And all those tasks are really valuable. There's no sort of token task. They're all valuable sorts of things that they can get involved in on the working bee day. So as well as that acceptance and kindness and safety, there's also activity itself is useful. So for people to do some pruning or put their hands into the soil, that's so wholesome and health building in itself. So and just being useful, I think all of those sort of pretty airy-fairy concepts, but they're all so important in what we're doing, and I'm sure in what Anna May and Jodie and what so many other groups across Adelaide are doing. It's what's just so necessary and important in life.
Lovely. Thank you, Barry. Not airy-fairy at all. Well, if it is, then I'm drinking that Kool-Aid. So thank you so much for that. That is wonderful. And thank you all for sharing your wisdom with us today and your passion and commitment for neighbourhood inclusion. It's been a real privilege to be part of this conversation for me, and I'm very honoured that you could take time out of your busy days to take part. And so after this, I invite you all to check your inboxes for a little token of our gratitude or our thanks, which hopefully will show up. And for those joining us, who I encourage you to think about your own neighborhood and how you might like to take stronger action to encourage a deeper sense of belonging for people in them. And I hope that you have found this past session enlightening as much as I have, and encouraging towards your own efforts for neighborhood inclusion. So please feel free to post any comments in the chat and make any posts in your social media. And if you would like to reach out to any of the panelists, don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'll link you all together, because I'm sure they'll be more than happy to chat to you all. So right now we're going to take a little break for morning tea, but we'll return in 15 minutes to share a short video before we begin our next panel session. So what am I doing to build relationships and safeguarding in my community? So please feel free to get from your computer, grab a cuppa, a snack before rejoining us in 15 minutes at 11:45 Adelaide time. So thank you again to all of our panelists, and see everyone again very soon.
I would like to just take a moment just to kind of recap some of what we heard in the previous panel session. So a really big thank you to Anna May, Barry and Jodie again for joining us for the Neighbourhood Summit. We heard so much valuable things and key takeaway moments. A few key highlights that I'd like to recognize is, Barry made the comment around community groups, sometimes it's 30 and 70%. So 30% being in the garden, whereas 70% it's all about, the people that are in it. Jodie reminded us that we don't have to be perfect for you to get your project started. And for Anna May, it was all about accessibility and inclusion, about creating a space where marginalized people can feel safe. There's also some wonderful comments in the chat coming through, a lot of people offering ideas of places where they found inclusion and where people could check out. I know that Lauren spoke about being inspired to visit the Pear herself. And so thank you for those comments and feedbacks coming through. And it's really inspirational to hear the impact that the panel sessions and some of this information has on you as viewers. We're also going to re-embed the link to the Inclusive Neighbourhoods website into the chat, which also includes the mapping documents, which we mentioned earlier this morning. So please check it out if you have time. We hope that you enjoy the reports, and we're looking forward to any feedback you might have. I also encourage you to check out the survey link, which we've also posted. There are 4 key questions we're asking people who are attending today to check out and to respond. And so we'll leave that link open for 2 weeks. So feel free to have a think and go back to it if you want after today's session, or share it with friends and colleagues. Before we kind of go into the next panel session, I would like to share a video that was created by Julia Farr Purple Orange as part of their Inclusive Neighbourhoods project. A real special thanks to Trevor and the Rosefield Community Shed for sharing their story, and for Julia Farr for making this available to us. While watching this video, I would like to ask you to have a think around some of the key takeaway messages surrounding the shed as a place of inclusion and belonging, and what it takes to get this place feeling inclusive and a source of belonging. What are the different roles that people have, and the different sense of purpose they take from being a part of it. At this time, you can also think about what it might take for you or your community group to greater encourage increased neighbourhood inclusion across your own initiatives into the future. So following this video, we'll quickly come back to me before moving into the panel session. So without much further ado, here's the story of Adelaide's own Rosefield Community Shed.
Trevor Harrison, I'm 56. I had a consulting business for 28 years and now I'm retired.
Okay, you got the keys? Yep, sure have.
Being home and retired and doing nothing is not good for the soul. I've always been interested in handyman stuff. But being in my own shed, I was not talking to anybody. I had nobody to share stories with. So I needed to go out and find a sense of belonging. When I went down to Rosefield Community Shed, access was the last thing in my mind. You gotta overcome the attitude before you can talk access. All I had was to throw myself in the door, make myself known, and see whether people were able to or were willing to talk back to me and hold a conversation with me. That pretty well happened in the first 5 minutes I was there.
Did you drive that CNC machine?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it's up on the film. No, but it's just so genuine. So my idea of access is I've allowed people to see the problems I have, and they learn from that.
So if I take the door off, Trevor gets that much more room, he can come and go better.
We're now getting to the stage of being able to purchase equipment that I can be involved with. A CNC machine, the computerized router. Because I've got Bluetooth on my wheelchair, I can use the router by myself. I don't want to make a workshop that is fully accessible, or because shed is where I like. And I think the more messier a shed is, the more I like it. Regardless of access or whatever, I want the shed to be a shed.
I'm one of the supervisors, so I got great enjoyment of coming to the shed, just seeing what the blokes do, and the ladies that come here, help out if you can. For me, that's what the shed's all about. It's about community, I reckon.
This is my first day. Everybody so far has made me feel very welcome. I'm meeting new friends. And what's impressed me so far is the safety aspect. So you kind of work with someone until they're happy that you are safe to operate it on your own.
There's no barrier to gender, to age, to anything else. The important thing here is about having a safe place that people can come to and feel appreciated, and meeting other people, sharing skills, learning new interests, that sort of thing. Welcome everybody. Yeah, first of all, have we got any apologies for today? I've got Barry Fuss.
If you don't show up, I will actually make the effort of chasing up and finding out where that person is and just keep in contact.
I have Asperger's syndrome and a disability like that, so it allows me just to come to a place where you can feel, for me personally, a sense of self-worth.
I'm sure in this world there are a lot of people who are lonely, don't see people from one day to the next. So this sort of thing fills that gap, I think. And I think if we haven't had community around us, then you go, oh, I'm in this world all by myself. So I think we need community to care and share about one another.
Yeah, and that's what I really love about the shed, is that you've got people in your circle.
I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I did. Having visited Trevor and the Rosefield Community Shed, it is all that video portrayed it to be. I remember one important quote Trevor said to me. He said that sometimes it doesn't matter if the place isn't accessible as long as the mindsets are accessible. And that really signifies a really important message that we hope to get across here today around accessibility and inclusion. So the next panel session, we'd like to talk to a couple of neighbourhood champions, which I'll introduce in a moment. So I appreciate your patience as we get to the next group. But again, please keep any of those ideas or thoughts you're having in mind, following from Trevor's video, which I hope help inspire you further while you're watching the next panel session.
Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome back to our second panel session with the Neighbourhood Summit. What am I doing to build relationships and safeguarding in my community? So for those who are just joining us, and a reminder to others as well, my name is Sarah Faulkner, and I'm the project lead for the Neighbourhood Circles project, as well as your host for this final panel session. So today we have the privilege of being joined again by three more wonderful neighbourhood champions who are going to share their own stories of neighbourliness, belonging, and inclusion. So we're joined here today by Circles of Support parent and active neighbour, Helen Neal, disability advocate and facilitator, Annette Holden, and Morford Vale Football Club member and champion, Brenton Neal, as well as a support worker, Donald Sewer. So for today's panel session, I will be asking a series of questions to our panelists about their respective lives and involvements within their neighborhoods. While we cannot take any live questions at this time, please feel free to put any comments or questions into the chat, and we'll try to address them at a later date. So please also get in touch with us if you'd like to be connected to one of our panelists and hear more of their story. So if you're a social media user, please feel free to use the hashtags #NeighbourhoodSummit and #Adelaide2022 when posting about today's event. So again, before we get too far into our final session, I would like to first give the panelists a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and say a few words about who they are and what brings them here today. So I'd love to kick things off with you first, Annette. So can you introduce yourself to us, please, and tell us a bit more about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm a former journalist and public relations consultant and media advisor and media liaison officer, and then project officer and other sort of bureaucratic roles back in the days when I had pretty ordinary sight. It was never good, but it worked. I lost my sight about 10 to 12 years ago from genetic conditions, and over the past 5.5 to 6 years in particular, I am now a disability facilitator, disability awareness facilitator, an advocate and a lobbyist, and most of all a volunteer for people who live with disabilities and any other group that needs a voice, and I can add my support to them or help enable them to find the voice. It's my absolute passion in life, my purpose in life, and has helped me find sense in losing my sight, that along with a fabulous guide dog, and the communities and neighbourhoods in which I've become involved are my other families now. So absolutely volunteer, reach out, engage. And if you don't find your right fit immediately, just keep trying.
Thank you, Annette. Lovely introduction. And now I'll turn it to you, Helen. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen, and I'm here today with the hat on as parent of a young man. My son is 24 years old, Tom, and he has a disability. So I'm here as his mother and a member of his circle of support, which he's had for 5 years. I'm also a recent initiator or connector of neighbours in our local area. So at the beginning of 2021, I reached out to some local people around us, and we've started something called Neighbours on Wattleberry, where we've been connecting and learning a little bit more about our neighbours. And yeah, that's a very exciting thing that's happening for us now. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much, Helen. Love the multiple hats being worn today. And last but certainly not least, Brenton and Donald, would you mind introducing yourselves to us, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Donald Sewer. I'm married with 2 children and 2 grandchildren. I had a 46-year career in Telstra before I finished full-time in the workforce. And it was always my intention after I finished work, that is 5 days a week, to undertake the role that I now take in some sort of support capacity with people. I'm a life member of the Morpeth Vale Football Club, and which I'll expand on later. I thought that it could be something that Britain might like to get involved in the community with the various roles we have down there, which we now do, and we enjoy it very much. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Donald, and hello to you too, Brenton. Lovely to have you join us today.
My name is Brenton. Oh,
that's all right.
My mind just gone blank. I can't help it.
That's all right.
I can't know
What do you do? What do you like doing?
I go down to the Rosefield Football Club to do the cannonball, sort them out, and put them in bags. But I am going to help me get into that. But I am really like going in there. No, get mates. I got in there. Paul, Ian, Wayne, Guys, Graham, Skinner, and Tony. All my mates they were met down there.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Brenton. You have a lot of mates and a lot of roles at the club, and I know look forward to hearing more about it as we get into today. So thank you all very much for those wonderful introductions. And so I'd like to because we don't have a whole lot of time today, I'd like to kick things off. And first question I have is for you, Helen. So I would love to hear more about your son, Tom, and his circle of support. So it's a bit of a two-part question, but for those who don't know what a circle of support is, would you mind explaining a bit more what it is and why it was formed, as well as what it's done to support and safeguard Tom in his life? So, why is a circle of support important for Tom?
Okay, so a circle of support is basically when people are intentionally invited into a group, I suppose, that in our case Tom chose. So we got together and thought about who had always shown some interest in him, who he liked, and who we thought might want to take a new role in his life. So those people were invited when he was leaving school, so when he was around 18. And we meet, his circle of support meets probably every 6 to 8 weeks and gets together to come together and to share information about themselves and what Tom's been doing. And this has been going for 5 years now. So people have built up a much deeper level of knowledge about Tom and about his hopes and dreams for the future. He shares his vision and our vision for him to have a good life. And they're basically friends, allies, advocates, people that really care and come together and also provide him with additional opportunities. So he's a very social person. He loves to go out to eat, have a drink, to do all sorts of things. I often say he was born in the wrong family because he loves everything to do with water and I hate getting wet. So he gets all sorts of opportunities. Last week he went with 2 of his circle friends and they went snorkeling off a reef, which he loved. He's been to caravan and camping show, which we'd never been to before. You know, he's got to meet their families and learn a lot about those people as well. So whilst he's always receiving from his circle of support, he's actually contributing back too, which I think I really like. I've always been very keen that Tom was never just a receiver. Sometimes people with disabilities just receive, and he's a very community-minded person. So his circle of support gives him the opportunity to give back as well. His circle, they've done fundraising for the Hutt Street Centre, walks, things like that. So it's really given him a great purpose and helped him transition from school into post-school life. Being with adults that he's chosen and who willingly jumped at the chance of being in his circle. I think what's really lovely is that the initial people who were invited are still in his circle, with one new addition as well. We've brought the age barrier down, level down a bit and invited a slightly young person, or he has. And that, you know, it's a dynamic circle. So I expected people perhaps to leave and then new ones come, but no one's left because they all love being part of his life. For us as a family, it's a massive thing. It's lovely to know that so many people care, genuinely care about him as an individual, got to see him beyond the surface and really understand a lot more about him as a person. And to know that when we're not around, for whatever reason, that I really strongly believe that he will have a circle that will be there safeguarding his vision, holding that strong. And that's also a wonderful feeling for his sister. To know that there are other people that genuinely care. So circle of support's been massive in his life and in our life. Yeah, so I think that's a little bit about what a circle is and what it's meant to him. Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. That is wonderful. And it sounds like a very powerful and important thing in his world and for everyone involved. So thank you for sharing. Love to hear more about it, but we're going to have to move on to our next lovely panelist, which is Annette. And it's a bit of a different, similar but very different question for you, Annette. So as someone who identifies as living with a vision impairment, we've spoken before about your move into a new neighborhood and the things you've done to build relationships with other people, neighbors, and members of your wider community as well. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience moving into a new place and what you've personally done to build relationships with neighbors or community groups, and how it's been received? So, you know, why is knowing your neighbours important to you?
To me, knowing my neighbours and the wider community is a way of feeling valued and contributing and being part of life outside my own boundaries. And it always has been. As a journalist, I moved home and states and even countries many times when I could see. And since losing my sight, I've moved twice, and each time it's involved meeting a new group of people around me. I was thinking as Helen was speaking, I've actually all my life created my own circle of support, but it's even, and as an informal thing, but it's exactly what Helen was just describing, having people there who have my best interests in mind and know me well enough to be able to expand my horizons and and be there in an emergency or just at a time of isolation. And even more recently, and particularly through COVID, I've made an effort deliberately to create that circle without having named it until now, because it's really clear from what Helen was saying that that's actually what it is. And it's so important in terms of meeting new people and being able to, inverted commas, hang out with friends of all ages, and being included and part of community life. When I lost my sight, I lost a lot of, I felt like I had lost a lot of independence. I thought it was the end of the world. And it certainly created a new life that I had never expected. But it's also a life full of purpose and value and good people and good experiences. And like Helen's son, Tom, I love being out and living in with capital letters, living. So it's so important. And I'm thinking about the question that Sarah's just put to me. I've decided that really I've been following through from what I did from the first time I moved interstate, that, I arrived in, first of all in Broken Hill and then in Perth, where I didn't really know anyone at all. And outside of work, if I hadn't made a real effort, my life would have been very narrow. So I literally knocked on doors and letterboxed with, hello, I'm your new neighbour, and which it wasn't easy. I don't find that sort of behaviour comes easily, but fortunately it was well received. And if somebody was busy or just not interested, fair enough, and nobody was outright rude, thankfully. But through that I've made some wonderful friends and still am friends with people, and I'm from a much older demographic than I think anyone else here. So I'm talking many years that I'm still friends with many of the people I first met. And that same making a cake or letterbox dropping, hello, my name's Annette, I live with my guide dog and a little pet dog, and please let me know if there's ever an issue with their barking or anything else. Not that the guide dog does, but the other one did. And through that, some people responded, and then the more time we hung out, having coffees or whatever, the more we just got to get to know, we became friends. We got to know each other, which also gives a great sense of feeling safe in living alone. I know that people are looking out for me. We're not in each other's pockets. We don't actually see each other very often. But I certainly know that if the lights are on around me, I know that there's someone there. And if they weren't to be on for any extended point of time, I would sort of make a polite inquiry, as I know that they would of me. And that's in my situation very precious. So I can't speak highly enough of the circle of friends and circle of support without actually being a part of a formal one. Just an informal one is fabulous. And again, it's also, I think, of a comfort to my brother and my daughter who live in South Australia but away from me. I think it would be a comfort to them to know too that they're not responsible for my life, and I don't want that, and they certainly wouldn't need that.
That is wonderful, Annette. Thank you so much. And just, the idea of, not noticing people's lights being turned on and off and what that means to you, I think is really, really important. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
And then I guess, again, we'll turn to you, Brenton and Donald. Now, I have something a bit different, but similar question, of course, to ask you. So Brenton, you've become a very active member of the Morton Vale Football Club over the past year. And in chatting to you both before, Donald helped share the story about how you became part of the football club and what it has done to your life. So Donald and Brenton, can you tell us a bit more about why and how you, Brenton, became involved in the football club, and how it came about, as well as some of the roles that you take there?
You want to have a go, or would you like me to start? When I first started assisting Brenton, he was the shift that I do. He 10-pin bowling, which is very much his passion. So on the day that we did that, that was okay. And then Brenton changed the day of the week that he wanted to bowl, so that day became vacant. and I had to think of something else that we could do together to fill in our time. Brenton loves motor cars and AC/DC and things like that, and I don't like any of them. So that was never going to happen. So I thought that as I'm involved at the local football club, and there are jobs down there that a group of gentlemen do on Fridays. We call the Friday morning crew, and it's old retired chaps. There's 10 of us who get down there and do various maintenance activities around the oval to keep it nice and clean and tidy, and painting and all that kind of stuff. And I thought this could be just what Brenton would like to be involved with. He could meet people, get involved in doing activities that are suitable for what he can do. So I approached Paul, who's the leader of our group, and I also approached the football club manager, Michelle, and I put the idea past them, and they were both really enthusiastic about it. And Michelle took it to the Morphevale Footy Club committee, and they just jumped all over it. They thought it was a fantastic idea. So we got Brenton a leather apron and some gloves and the protective gear that he'd need. And down we went to the football club, and we got him sorting the cans and the bottles, and I had to dig him out of the rubbish bin sometimes. He was that enthusiastic about it. It can be it's a dirty job. You've got to get very clean afterwards and so forth. But the important part of it, and I'm sure you'll all know, ladies, with the local sporting clubs, getting any extra money you can get is so important. And as we've told Brenton on numerous occasions, the mundane job that he performs with this provides much needed funds to our group to be able to buy the materials and that we need to do other things around the club. So he does perform a very, very important task, and we tell you that a lot, don't we? We're always telling him that, you really are doing something that is worthwhile, because when Brenton first went down there, one of the comments he made, and it stuck in my mind, that he said this role allows him to be involved in different tasks and meet different people, and he really wants to do that. So in a nutshell, that's how we did it. And we made him an honorary member, and he's also got a shirt and a stubby holder and all sorts of other things but he's very, very much appreciated for what he does. And you might want to talk about the going to the footy game against Happy Valley that day, and maybe going to the Christmas function, a couple of things that you seem to enjoy. Would you like to share those? You can share them. You don't want to share them? Eh?
I'll get them up.
Oh, you sure? Okay. Brenton attended one of our games last year, a home game, and the Friday crew were given, the club put on a dinner for us afterwards, and he was just a guest for the day of the president and myself down there, and he really enjoyed that, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And that's where he was given his awards. The vice president called him up, and we took photos of him, and they were put on the club's Facebook page, and he met a lot of people that he hadn't met before. So that was really, really nice. And we also had him as a guest at our Christmas dinner function recently. With our sponsors were there, and the presidents of the clubs were there, and he had a couple of nice beverages and a beautiful meal, didn't you? And took a little bit of the meal home too afterwards. So he really enjoyed that. Is there anything else you'd like to add that maybe I haven't thought of? Oh, it's okay. There's no pressure. Just have a think. What are you doing recently when we arrived down there? What do you get that? What do I give you straight away so that you run the show? Yeah, what's that? Yeah, go on. You explain.
He gives me the key to I open up the door. He go pick out the bins and that, and then we will see him in the bins, and we go back to car, put our gear on, then we go back and get them out and sort them out.
So you've got the key to everything, haven't you?
Key to the sack for the ice rig.
And the cricket nets and the cricket shed, and you name it, you've got it. Yeah. And I've tried and find it very hard to get it back off him. So you enjoy that, don't you?
Yeah. and we're waiting for next week.
So just say that again.
I wear my uniform every week.
You wear your uniform every week.
Yes, yes, he does.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Now I gotta wear a wash up before this weekend. So I'm gonna get that on the weekend.
There's another function on Saturday that Brenton's coming down to that he's making certain he's got a clean uniform.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brenton and Donald. I have more questions for you, Brenton, but one thing that stuck in my mind, I remember you saying, was when you go down to the people you met, first thing you said to me was, well, I give them hell and they give me hell. So it sounds like a real football club environment. Yeah, it's great. Well, it sounds like you have lots of roles, so thank you. I'd love to hear more. We'll quickly turn to you, Helen, as well, and to ask you a bit more around Tom, Circle of Support, as well as your recent role as a neighborhood connector. So over the past year, you've shared with me some of your own efforts of connecting people in your neighborhood together. And can you tell me a bit more about what prompted you to do this, and what other things you might have personally done to support the building of relationships between Tom, your family, and members of your community, and kind of why this building of relationships in your neighborhood was important, or if you have any stories you'd like to share.
Okay. All right. So I think COVID, for a lot of people, a lot more people spending time at home, and I work from home anyway, and where I'm sitting now, I'm at the front of my house, and through COVID there were a lot more people out walking, and we sort of started doing that thing where you put a bear in your front yard as well, and the number of people who would stop and look at that, and sometimes I was out front a lot more, so I started talking to more people. Sarah knows me, so she knows I'm a big talker, so it's not hard. But, it seemed that people were in isolation, they were reaching out more. It seemed to be a very natural thing that was happening. And I had heard about something before that called the Open Garage, which was a neighbourhood group operating down in South Brighton. And I just loved what they were doing. And that's like, wow. And I was thinking about doing something. And when COVID hit, and it's like, oh, well, can't sort of really invite strangers in during that time. But as time went on, where we live, we're on quite a busy street. And I thought, we don't really know our neighbours very well. I know immediate people, and everybody was very friendly, but I thought we shouldn't just limit it to that. And I did hear that there was new people moving in diagonally across the road from me, and they've built a side-by-side house. So it's an adult parents, like older parents with an adult daughter with a disability moving in. So I thought, now's the time. Be nice to invite them and welcome them into the street. And that was really the catalyst, I suppose. So I just did a really simple little note and copied it off, and Tom and I probably dropped it in a dozen letterboxes, just either side and across the road. And we just said, look, if you'd like to come over Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, we'll put on tea and coffee. You bring your cup, because, we're all being very COVID safe. If you've got any spare produce, lemons dropping off your tree, feel free to come. And I thought, well, if no one turns up, I'll just drink the tea myself anyway. It doesn't really matter. To our delight, we had 25 people turn up on a Saturday morning. And, they all sort of sheepishly wandered in at first and said hello. And it was just really nice. And before I knew it, the area I had in case someone had brought something was just groaning with produce. So there were lemons and limes and tomatoes, and a guy across the road has chicken, so there was eggs, and then the neighbour had made soap, so she brought that in. Someone else had baked something, and it was just a really, really beautiful feeling. And I think what I took away from that was that everybody said they were very thankful that we'd done that. And they all said, I've always wanted to do something like this, but we've just not done it. Thank you. And I had a piece of paper, and I said to people, if you want to leave your name and your street number and or a number, if you want that to be shared, jot it down and I'll do that. And everybody did. And they kept saying, when are we going to do the next one? So that was that was great, because, I was almost preparing myself for no one to turn up. And in the end, we had this lovely connection. Nobody knew each other, which is sort of sad. I don't think communities are as organic as they used to be. You know, we used to have less people worked, certainly women. Fences were lower, people walked to school, you know, there's a lot more natural stuff happening. And now I thought, no, it has to be a bit more intentional. So that's really what started it. I wanted to welcome these new people in, but I also wanted people to know us, and specifically our son, who, you know, we've all got room for more friends, and he definitely has, and more connection. And people got to know him that day. They knew that he had a micro enterprise. They learned about that. So, you know, from that, a few people then reached out. One said, oh, could you do my lawns on a regular basis? Someone else said, I'm going to be going away next week on a driving holiday. Would you be able to come and water my pot plants for me while I'm away, and bring the bins in? And that's the sort of thing that started to be shared, that conversation with people. So that's where it's flowed on from. We've done a couple more events since then. We've done a driveway drinks one night on a Friday night. Again, people bring their own stuff, because it's not about us being necessarily the owners of this. This is about the community. And so I think the way to do that is just to have a space and let people bring their own gear. It's more inclusive, I think, that way too. And that went well. And then one of the neighbours said to me, I've heard that the local council have a grant going for community events for Connection. And we put in from that, and we got a $500 grant for our Christmas event, which was lovely. So we had a fun time. And for that, we had over 40 people come for the Christmas event. So, you know, reaching out, getting to know people, and getting to know people as a person first rather than the disability first, I think is really important in our case, our family's case. And that happens through through meeting people and talking and learning about their interests and their strengths. So we've even got something hoping to happen this year. Our son wants to start having occasional nights by himself, and the neighbours either side have said when he's ready to do that, because we shared that with them, they'll be on standby with their phone numbers ready to go if there's a need, or maybe they'll just have dinner together first. So, you know, I think that's a really great sign of success, that people are not only willing but really wanting to connect and to help. So it's not just like having to drag someone into it, it's the fact they actually want opportunities to do this, I think was something I've taken from this. Yeah. That's a lot of talking, isn't it? Sorry, Sarah.
No, it was all fantastic, Helen. Everything you said was wonderful. And I loved, we finished off with the idea that there is a role to play for neighbours in this too, you know, that people do want to, and just like being invited into a circle of support, neighbours can be invited into other people's lives as well. And that there's that important connection.
Yeah, and I think we often hold back as people because we don't want to be rejected. And so that stops you often, but it's unnecessary, really. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Helen. And I guess I'll turn to you, Annette, because my question is a little bit similar as well.
It's around... Before your question, sorry, please may I respond to some of the things Helen's saying, because it's such a beautiful story, and I find it so empowering for the neighbours as well as for Tom, because a lot of, and I've learned this through discussions with a lot of the different peer networks I'm involved with, that a lot of people want to help, as you said, but don't know how, or they're afraid. They don't want to overstep the mark or say the wrong thing, and the wish is genuine, but it's a step too far. So this has enabled them to be empowered, so that and both Tom and the neighbours are doing what they want without any fear of, as you said, of rejection. But it's so uplifting for all of them. And the other comment about people first, that is so relevant. I'm very proudly heavily involved with a campaign that's going to be released soon called See Me for Me. And I was involved all last year, right from the co-design workshop and all through. And now I'm actually part of the campaign, literally. And that really is see me for me, see me. And then, just by the way, I happen to have a challenge or an impairment. And that goes for anyone living with a disability. So thank you for your story then. That was just fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. And you kind of partially answered the question I was going to ask. So thank you for going there and reading the room. It was really around the role of neighbors and what role can neighbors play in somebody's life and how can we encourage that. And from your own example, you know, how you putting yourself out there with neighbors has changed your relationships at all, made you feel safer in your neighborhood. And we kind of talked a bit about this earlier, but I wasn't sure if there's any more you wanted to add following from what you've just mentioned with Helen.
Yeah, Helen mentioned about the phone numbers and the street numbers and the names, and in the context of sharing them with the neighbourhood with permission. Part of my reason for reaching out and introducing myself when I moved to any of the places, but particularly where I am now, was so I knew someone in an emergency. I mean, I have lots of wider friends, but in an emergency, I needed the comfort of knowing there would be someone right there. And preferably more than one person because they may not be home, for example. So for myself, I've now, and they have my details, but I also have a number of phone numbers and names that I know should something go wrong, I can ring. And that in terms of security and safety and independence, because my wish is to remain living independently, but practically without that neighbourhood awareness, even though, as I said, we're not in each other's pockets, they wouldn't really know what I do from day to day, except they would notice if I wasn't there, which, and from personally, that's what's really important, that if suddenly they heard the guide dog barking and they hadn't seen me around or just, you know, they hadn't seen me come and go, and that someone would ask. And it's very pertinent to me through the peer networks I'm involved with, that the terrible incident with a fabulous young woman, it's well known throughout the state, but a lady who was forgotten effectively, that's I think the fear of anyone in my sort of situation living independently, and that's why neighbours are important. That we, even able-bodied people, we need neighbours to, and just anyone in our community to be aware and to speak out or ask. Actually, that's one of my big messages, is to ask about anything. You know, people in the different awareness sessions I give will say, "Oh, but I didn't know," or I was afraid, or I didn't know what to say." Just ask. Politely, and don't be too personal about it, but that everybody is willing to tell their story if it's a legitimate and respectful question, I'm sure, particularly if it means that better understanding between each other.
Thank you, Annette. That's such important messaging, and about the importance of informal relationships in someone's life, you know, circle of support, a neighbor or community, people that know you, you know, to be there to look out for you into the future. And for the case of Anne-Marie Smith, she had very limited social contact. So that is a great fear and a great risk of people being isolated. So thank you. And my question is kind of a little bit similar to you, Brenton and Donald. It's around relationships.
I used to work for ACH.
Yeah.
For old people, and I used to work there, and Thursday morning I had them, and at 50, from Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a lot of roles in your life, Brenton. You've done a lot of things where you're out and you're doing things with other people, and you're seeing other people, and you're meeting other people. How is it, and with your role you talked about before, and then with the football club, you know, how important is it for you to meet new people and to have people in your life that you know? You know, you named off some of the names of people at the football club that you mentioned before. Love to hear more about the new people that you've met now that you've had this new role, and if that's important in your life and what it's done for you.
I'm important now, so it's been good fun. You playing today and somewhere else to go to.
Somewhere else to go to.
Someone else to look up for a fight. You train them all each week,
Yeah, you're there every week, and I noticed that on one of the tables you made, there's actually a name, your plaque, your name is on the table that you helped to make, and you have a spot that apparently you have to sit at every week. So if you didn't show up, they would notice, wouldn't they?
The Friday crew refurbished all of the tables in the whole complex from scratch all the way down, and Breton was involved in especially the painting of the structure underneath and the varnishing of the tops. And the group were allowed to put their own names on a plaque on one of the tables. So Breton's name is on there as well. And what did you think when you saw your name on there? Right?
I didn't care.
I think you picked it out pretty quickly. So yeah, it's a table of honour now for the group.
Yeah, of course. And you've made a lot of new relationships, and I think that's what I love when I heard your story, Brenton, is you had this free time in your day, and rather than just kind of go and fill it with different things, you actually committed to going to the same place each week, doing some really important roles and really important work, and contributing and becoming an active member. So now it's actually led to other things, like you going to the football games, shaking every single person's hand, I think you said, at the Christmas function, leaving so they all know you now, and so you've built a bigger network of people around you.
You get to know them when you've been there for a while. When I've been there a year.
You've been there a year? Yeah. Just the beginning. Hey, Brenton.
Brenton, can I ask, are the club any good? Are the footballers any good? Where did they finish on the ladder? I'm interested.
They lost the grand final.
Oh, darn. Okay, maybe this year.
Maybe this year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Well, we could talk footy all day, but I won't go down that track.
No, sorry.
That's all right. Don't know. I know Brenton and I have different teams we go for, so we won't bring it up. But so thank you so much. And I guess we're running the last kind of bit of our time. But I guess I'd quickly like to ask everyone for one final question. And that's really around if you could say one lesson or key piece of advice or important story that you'd like to share to other people who might be thinking about connecting more people in the neighborhood or to other things, what might it take, or what actions can you do to help encourage other people to be included, particularly if someone's more vulnerable. So I'd like to start with you, Helen. Is there one key piece of advice or message you'd like to share?
Sure.
I've been in paper for.
What?
Sorry, thank you, Brenton. We'll get to you shortly. I know you probably have wonderful wisdom to share.
Okay, so really, I think for me the thing is to keep it simple. I was involved in starting up another group about 20 years ago for siblings, and I think for sustainability, we know everybody has busy lives and lots of commitments. So I feel personally, if I'm involved in something and it's a simple formula, that works better. And like I said, making it as inclusive as possible. So providing a space potentially, or a public space, and being the person who does a bit of the legwork, but really that there's no cost to anyone, low or no cost, because then it's much more inclusive. Things that have helped us is to vary, again, the day or the time, because if you always have something on a Monday night, you might always miss out somebody who's got a commitment. So we might make it a Saturday morning or a Friday night or a Sunday lunch, just to try to keep it involving as many different people as possible. And a little practical thing is name tags, just a sticky label with a name and maybe your street number, because people feel better if they can say someone's name, and there's a different connection, I think, when you start using people's names. So keep it simple, like I said, and just do it. Just do it. If it's something you might walk away from this and think, oh, I really love to meet my neighbours, then do it. It is really rewarding, and I think it's so important. Loneliness is a huge epidemic in our society, and it's so unnecessary. Like Annette was saying, you don't have to live in each other's pockets, but it's nice to know someone's got your back. and it's nice to be able to do that for someone else too. So go for it and meet some great people out there.
That's wonderful advice, Helen. Thank you very much. And I feel like, you know, before this morning, we also, similarly, you guys are all reading stuff that came out in my mapping report. It's almost like you've all read it already, or maybe it's just because I've read it.
All right.
Yeah, no, but it's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So Annette, do you have any key lesson, story, or piece of advice you would like to share for others who might be listening on inclusion and belonging and accessibility?
I absolutely support everything that Helen just said. Absolutely. Be bold, offer help, ask for help, participate. Helen said earlier about being out in the front yard watering or with your dog, or because people do walk past, and that's a really easy way to just say hello. And again, no commitment, but you're talking to people, particularly during COVID. That was very important. Go along and try groups, local council groups or Rotary or Probus, or give the local libraries. Give a group a try if you are on your own and a bit lost, or just interested in meeting new people. And if it's not the right group or the right mix for you, the right fit, try a different one. Give it a little go, but then be prepared to move on. Don't be put off by the first feeling of rejection. And I know it's easy to say because I understand that, you know, it's not easy to just walk in unannounced, but most places are eager to have new members, and if they're not, then find a different group because you need one that's welcoming. And I guess my only other the life-changing thing for me is volunteering. Just the stories given today all indicate just the value of it, not only to the community and to individuals, but to the person who is volunteering. And speaking for myself, it saved my life. It opened a whole new world and a purpose, and so many wonderful people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and including into a whole new direction in life. So just be brave and take risks. Safe risks, but risks are the same.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Annette. And you're right, yeah, talk about volunteering. Moving here as a Canadian migrant many years ago, that's where I met all of my friends when I first moved here. So the importance of that. And that brings us to you, Donald and Brenton. I guess I'd really love to know if there's anything you'd like to share around, add to our conversation, particularly on the importance and the role that you took, Donald, in connecting Brenton to the football club, and the advice you might like to share to other people who might be in a similar role, or someone else who, like you, Brenton, is keen to take an active role and be involved, and what's some advice you might be able to share with them about how to do it and the importance.
From my point of view, I've been extremely grateful. In this instance, it's my football club, but it could be any football club, that the community organisation has given Brenton an opportunity to become involved and undertake functions that are value add, not just there because they're being, you know, as I mentioned, Brenton helps to raise revenue for our football club so that we can undertake other projects. So I'm grateful to my club and also to Brenton for taking it on. And for me to be part of it's been terrific. It's put a smile on my face as well. And the comments that I get back from other people, not just the Friday crew, but other people who have met Brenton at the footy club in games, that, you know, it's a terrific idea. And so that's a learning for me. And I'm hopeful it's put a smile on Brenton's face as well.
I'm just glad to share one part going something different. Right now I can relax, do what I want, but I'm the one helping them get more money out back from the cash that we are taking next week. The wealth management, that could be but no, it's been good fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're giving you a chance to volunteer, meet new people, you're connected. It sounds like it's been a really, really great addition to your life, Brenton, being part of the club.
I told someone else one time, they said, "Do you know where I can get some help?" And I told them, and I got a phone number, and that, but because what don't go, but I just say, yeah, phone number, that, different kids. If you want some help, just to help. Yeah, I can go all for you. I got the number for you. And I can ring and find out what to do.
Yeah. So you're a big help. You're a big help to everyone there. And so you value add to that organization. So
He certainly does.
thank you. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Brendan. You've all kind of given me so much food for thought, so much things to think about and to take away. The word to Dr. Seuss, all the thinks you can think. It's my favorite quote, and I'm full of that at the moment. So, so thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your passion, your commitment to connect to neighborhood and build neighborhood inclusion and safety. So really honored that you could join us for today's session. So we're kind of running out of time. So I'm going to have to wrap up, but after this, I invite you all to check your inboxes or your mailboxes for a little token of our thanks for being involved and for sharing.
Thank you for Helen and Annette too. Very interesting.
Yeah, fantastic panel of people. Wonderful having you.
And as well. I got cleaner.
His cleaner's name is Annette.
Well, thank you. So I guess for those who are joining us who are not part of the panel, I encourage you to think about your own neighborhood, and again, how you might take stronger action to encourage deeper sense of belonging for everyone who lives within it. And I hope you found the past session enlightening and encouraging towards your own efforts for neighborhood inclusion, and to not forget about your role as Annette and Helen and Donald and Brenton made aware, there is a role for you out there. So don't be afraid to ask what you can do, or how you can help. Yeah, people ask you for help. Exactly. So it's a two-way street. So thank you. So feel free to, again, post any comments in the chat or make any posts in your social media. We are going to take another break for lunch, but we'll be back at 1:30 Adelaide time to hear the wonderful Sophie Thompson on more grows in a garden than a gardener grows, what I've learned from my years spent in community. So I invite people to please get up from your computer, grab some lunch, or take a short walk before joining us at 1:30 p.m. Adelaide time. So again, thank you to our panelists for joining us, and thank you to everyone who's watching, and see you again soon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Before the lunch break, we heard from some wonderful panelists, some neighborhood champions around their stories of inclusion and accessibility. And there were some wonderful questions and comments in the chat. I'd like to highlight one Sherry asked around the pre-purchase phase, how to support people engage with the community in a way to finding out if those spaces are safe and inclusive. And some of the comments from that question were really important and just highlight how going out, giving things a go, giving them a try is really important, and having that supportive person with you to do that. It's also a really key factor of checking out and learning about neighborhood inclusion and access. There's a role for everyone to play in our neighborhoods to bring people in, and so providing those spaces of welcome and support is really important. So thank you again to Annette, Helen, Donald and Brenton for sharing their stories with us before lunch. It was really valuable. Now, before we kind of go into our final guest speaker of the day, Sophie Thompson, I'd like to showcase a lovely video of another local neighborhood initiative from here within Adelaide. I had the privilege of being able to explore lots of different neighborhood projects, circles and initiatives during the course of the past 12 months. And this is where I came across One Voice Kingston Park Choir. So One Voice Kingston Park is the first open voice choir in South Australia. They're a group of people who meet weekly in the southern suburbs to practice singing purely out of fun and joy. They call themselves a Goldilocks choir, so something that's not too formal, not too casual, the perfect mix of learning and fun. And they mentioned that quite a number of their choir members have sung in different choirs over many years. However, some others have never sung outside of the shower or their car. So some didn't even get into their high school musical. But here all voices are welcome. And so One Voice Kingston Park is a really great example of how people come together for sheer joy of something, how it builds a sense of community, and very limited expectations around talent or expectations around how good your singing voice might be. So while they're currently taking a break due to COVID-19, they hope to start up again soon. So more information of the group, we can post a link to their website in the chat box later. So while watching this video, I'd like you to take bring attention to the role of the choir in people's lives and how it encourages a sense of inclusion and belonging. You know, the key purpose behind the choir is not to be pitch perfect, but to provide opportunities for people to come together over shared interest, find a sense of community and belonging. So we hope you enjoy this short video showcase of your One Voice Kingston Park Choir to perk you up and help you get through the rest of your afternoon.
My name's David Kelly. I'm the coordinator of the Kingston Park with One Voice Choir, and I've been involved in the choir since its very beginning.
To me, a community choir is a place where you can come and just bring whatever skill or attribute you've got and just be part of something within the local community.
When we come together, we're doing one thing and it makes it very special.
It's really uplifting, and no matter what sort of day or week you've been having, when you leave, you're just happy.
We honestly didn't know what to expect because we'd never been in anything like this before or been to anything like this before. And as soon as we came through the door, honestly, the atmosphere was so welcoming, so inclusive. Everyone just made us feel right at home.
The With One Voice movement was started by an organisation called Creativity Australia, and there are now more than 30 choirs. We started pretty small. We started with a group of around 25 people, but that rose to the beginning of 2020 where we had up to 65 members. Every Wednesday we meet at Cowrie Community and Sports Centre in Seacliff, and we spend about an hour and a half singing together.
For me, it was a sense of community spirit and sense of belonging, and amazing energy in the room.
I really enjoy coming to choir because I've got to meet so many different people.
Nobody's better or worse than the others, but the sound is beautiful and it makes you feel good.
It's given me a greater appreciation and a little bit more understanding of music, and also more confidence in my voice.
It's more than just coming along to sing. It's about being in an environment that's supportive and caring and connected. And that's what makes our choir such a rich and joyful experience.
Every Wednesday when we sing, I go back home happier.
We don't have any auditions or anything like that. We know that everybody can sing.
We came not expecting anything, and we thought, oh, well, if we don't like it, we won't stay, you know. Well, from the moment we walked in, we felt like we were part of it, and there's no way we would miss now.
You know, it's one of these small things in life that makes you happy.
Our job as a choir, and the role of our two conductors, is to help people to find their voice so that they can join in as a group in singing together.
I think we all have a voice and we all can sing.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed our short video from One Voice Kingston Park. Big thank you to them for letting us share it here today. And I hope it highlighted the role that providing a place for social connections plays across different types of neighbourhood initiatives, regardless of why and people come together. Another place where social connections notably occur is actually across the garden. So within the neighbourhood mapping reports, some people might find that there's actually a lot of what's called placemaking projects or project-based groups, which facilitate social connections, togetherness, and belonging. So a lot of green spaces and garden spaces and places of the natural environment actually play an important role also in helping provide opportunities for many people to connect together over a shared purpose and goal. So in light of the role that garden spaces play, I would love to introduce Sophie Thompson, who I had the privilege of speaking to early in the week. Sophie is a garden consultant, writer, author, and presenter. She is a very active community member and has been passionately involved in supporting the revitalization and creation of a number of community gardens, particularly in the bushfire-affected Kangaroo Island. So over the next 50 minutes, we'll hear from Sophie on the benefits of engaging with nature, which she's very passionate about, and hearing about the role of natural garden spaces, both individually and environmentally. Sophie also speaks to us about the benefits of gardens in fostering opportunities for sharing and giving back, as well as creating a greater sense of community connectedness. So while we might not be able to respond to any direct live questions to Sophie during the session, she encourages anyone to send through any comments, feedback, or questions that they would like shared with her, and also that they might engage with her on her Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. I think she's on Twitter, I'm not sure, but she definitely has a Facebook, Instagram, and website. And if you do still want to post about today's event in social media, again, a reminder that the hashtags are hashtag Neighbourhood Summit and hashtag Adelaide 2022. So I hope you enjoy the speak from Sophie Thompson around the role of gardens and garden spaces to support individual health and well-being, as well as foster community connection.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for meeting with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and to present on what more grows in a garden than a gardener grows. So what you've learned from your years spent in community. People are probably sick of hearing from me by now, so I'm not going to do too much more talking, but otherwise I'm just going to let you take it away whenever you're ready. But again, thank you for your time and making yourself available. So.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And you know, I should say that I am a particularly passionate gardener, and I am totally biased because I genuinely believe that gardening is the solution to everything. And over the years, I've often had a big picture focus, you know, what can we do to save the world? But as I've matured in age and temperament, I've realised that actually saving the world starts with saving ourselves, and then we scale it up. And so I'd love it if we could talk about, if we can go to the next slide, if we can talk about these different ways that we can save ourselves. And you know, let's start with ourselves. Gardening is amazing, you know. And over the last couple of years, where there's been so many challenges, whether it's bushfires, whether it's COVID, gardening has really been a rock for many, many people. And many people have also come to gardening who have never had connections with gardening before. And, you know, I've had so many conversations with people who've said, you know, it's been my saviour, you know, whatever the situation is, it's really helped them. And I will say, you know, right at the beginning that, you know, that photo of my hands in the soil, I used to be really embarrassed about my hands because I've got gardener's hands, and you'll always find dirt under my nails, and you'll see, you know, on the sides of my fingers, you'll see the dirt worn in there. And I used to be ashamed of it. And now I actually realise that that's a good thing. And, you know, I'm no longer ashamed of it. And people used to say, oh, you know, this hand cream works really well and it will get rid of all of that. And I think, no, actually, I like that. That's like my badge, that it shows that I'm real and I'm connected and I'm grounded and I'm down to earth. So now if we can have the next slide, thanks, Sarah. The other thing, not only does gardening teach us, but nature and time in nature is, it just can't be undervalued, and its power is extraordinary. So, you know, just if you've had a crazy day, you know, let's say, you know, things went wrong or you're going through a tough patch in life, just being in nature and just watching the beauty of a flower or watching the busyness of a bee, you know, your stress levels will drop immediately. And, you know, even now, if you can, you know, picture yourself at the end of a busy day and then just close your eyes and imagine yourself in a beautiful garden. As you do that, I can even feel my shoulders drop. And then if you remain in that space mentally and just take a deep breath in that space, your heart rate will slow down. So when we're in this fast-paced, crazy world with all this stuff going on, you know, world chaos, every time you turn the news on, it's not positive, it's not uplifting, it's not inspiring, it's scary, it's negative. You know, being able to get out into a garden, get out into nature if you haven't got your own garden, or just, you know, walk outside the door and focus on the beauty of nature. Nature is really amazing. And what I've found is over the last few years particularly, nature has taught us lots. So if we look at this next slide, these are images I took around my area. This is the Adelaide Hills. And, you know, 2 years ago, we had devastating bushfires. You know, people lost homes, some people lost their lives. And you know, it was quite overwhelming. And then just driving around my area and seeing how resilient nature is, you know, and seeing the regrowth, some of it within a month, and just saying, okay, nature gets on with it and recovers, I find constantly inspiring. And I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years working with the bushfire affected community of the Adelaide Hills and also on Kangaroo Island. And, you know, if we look at nature and how remarkable it is, it's inspiring for us to be resilient, and for us to know that, you know, life does go on, and we can rebuild and we can regrow and we can recover. And then the other thing, of course, that's been really challenging over the last couple of years, if we can have the next slide, Sarah, has been COVID. And, you know, the chaos and you know, everything in our lives has changed in the last couple of years. And often, you know, we images like the one on the left, you know, just looking at that puts us into fear. And then at the end of our last open garden, one of my COVID marshals, because, you know, there's a new term that I never knew about, we had a COVID marshal who came up to me at the end of 3 days of open garden and said, Sophie, did you know you've got COVID in the garden? And, you know, I sort of lost my sense of humour and, you know, was all a bit ramped up. And he took me over to show me this beautiful flower with a bee on it. And I thought, you know, we need to remember the beauty in all the chaos. And nature constantly is there to inspire us and to give us hope, and so that we can see the beauty. So if we have the next slide, Sarah, I'm going to talk in more detail about how gardening and being in nature can actually help us in terms of our health and well-being. And I'm not only talking about physical health and well-being, I'm talking about mental health and well-being. Now, you know, I'm going to run through these things briefly, but I could tell you that there are numerous studies about all of these aspects. In terms of exercise, gardening is low impact exercise that works all your major muscle groups, and we can adapt gardening to whatever your abilities, which is fantastic. So, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, we can still make gardening accessible. If you've got a bad back, we can make gardening accessible. And the thing about it is that, you know, if we do it right, gardening works all our major muscle groups. The challenge for some of us over-ambitious and headstrong gardeners is that we charge out in the garden and we're going to pull a weed or something, and then we come in a half a day later having moved way too much, something way too heavy, and, you know, we ache a little bit. You know, I know gardening works all the major muscle groups because at the end of the day, everything hurts. But if I was smart enough to do some stretches at the start of the day, like you would if you went to an exercise class, you know, I would actually be working smarter, and I wouldn't end up, you know, lying in the bath feeling sorry for myself. But they even tell me that we could replace let me get this right, we could replace a 30-minute gym session with 45 minutes spent working in the garden, which is amazing. And you think about that, you know, the great thing is when you have a garden or have access to a garden, you have your own 24/7 gym. with no membership fees and no trying to look good in lycra or active wear. So, you know, in terms of exercise, I'm totally biased, and we can modify gardening to suit everyone's ability. In terms of relaxation, you know, I mentioned before, we live in this crazy fast-paced world, and gardening can be a sanctuary. Gardening and gardens, just being in a garden is as effective too. It can be a sanctuary from our fast-paced crazy times and all the chaos that's going on. And what they know is that gardening can help to, you know, calm your heart rate, reduce your stress levels really powerfully. And so much so that they actually, in the UK, there was a study that said we should have an RDI, meaning a recommended daily intake of gardening. And if we had this RDI of gardening, we would have significantly less stress problems, significantly less health problems. And that RDI of gardening, they actually suggested we have about 1.5 hours a day RDI of gardening. You know, just like you'd say there's an RDI of a nutrient, whether it's vitamin C or iron or whatever it is. So, you know, while lots of people think, oh, if people don't get gardening, they don't understand how passionate gardeners feel so much better from being outside into it. But, you know, it is really, really, really powerful. And the reality is that if we're going through prolonged stress and we don't have a way to manage that stress, we will end up with physical and mental health challenges. So gardening can help reduce our stress before it becomes a problem, and that's really important. But I will say, you know, that picture of my hands in the soil, they were Jerusalem artichokes before. You know, you've got to get your hands in the soil as part of gardening. And I'm not talking potting mixes or anything like that. I'm talking about good organic enriched soil, because in that healthy soil, there's actually a naturally occurring microbe. It's called Mycobacterium vaccae. And when you get exposed to this microbe, it actually triggers serotonin release in your brain. And that's extraordinary. They're now using this to treat cancer patients in the UK. And what that means is that, you know, when you have access to a garden, you can self-medicate, you know, and you can't overdose, because lots of people will say to you, if they're a passionate gardener, oh, I've had a really tough week, I just need to go home and get my hands into the soil. Or, you know, I've just got to get my hands dirty. And that's not some airy-fairy thing. Now we understand that that's scientifically proven that when you do get your hands in the soil, you feel better, because that microbe releases serotonin in your brain. And, you know, in terms of general health, it doesn't matter whether, whatever the situation, you know, there's studies to show that gardening can support our general health. And even down to if you go to hospital, and you're going to be in hospital for more than one day, they suggest, well, I would suggest that you be a cantankerous patient, and I don't do better bricks and an air conditioning unit in the courtyard. I mean a green view. And the reason why is they've done studies on patients with a green view will have a faster recovery rate, they'll have lower blood pressure, they'll have lower stress levels, they'll even require less pain medication. So this is now scientifically proven. You know, it's no longer some airy-fairy thing that, you know, you feel better when you garden. And so it's worthwhile also, if you're visiting someone who is in hospital and maybe they don't have access to that green view, maybe it's a question of taking a bunch of flowers. Because, you know, when I understood that, you know, just looking at something of beauty, it's not just the gift, it's the beauty that has that profound effect on us. And so, you know, across the board, gardening has been proven to be great for our health, you know, whether it's our mental health in helping us to manage stress before it becomes a problem, or if we have got mental health issues, gardening can help them too. And across the board, it's been proven to help, whether it's, you know, with depression. There was a Norwegian study where they took a group of patients with moderate to severe depression, and they got them to do a 3-month horticultural course. And at the end of those 3 months, all patients experience reduced symptoms. So that's not saying some people benefit from gardening. That's saying that everyone benefits from gardening. Because, you know, in one way, what could be more optimistic than the simple act of planting a seed? You know, when we've got all the chaos going on in the world, as it's going on right now as we talk, you know, and we can't understand how people can behave like that. We can't understand all of that stuff. You know, to go out in the garden and say, okay, I'm going to plant some sweet pea seeds. And, you know, over the next month, by the way, the day that we traditionally plant them in Adelaide's around St. Patrick's Day, which is March 17th, and you'll plant them and they'll shoot. And a few months down the track, you'll have these beautiful flowers with exquisite scent. And that scent is uplifting and inspiring and healing in itself. You know, so the simple act of planting a seed reaffirms to us that there's a pattern, there's a season in life, and we just have to weather it. So now in terms of nutrition, you know, I am totally biased. If we can go to the next slide, Sarah, you know, when you have access to homegrown fruits and veggies, it changes your world. And I've recently been doing a bit of work with schools, and I think learning to grow at least part of your own fruits, veggies and herbs is one of the most important life skills we can give anyone. Now, you know, there's lots of people coming to growing veggies at mature ages. Lots of people I've met in the last couple of years have gone, do you know what, I've just retired and I've decided I'm going to try and grow my own veggies. So it doesn't matter whether we're young gardeners in terms of age or in terms of experience. You know, growing your own nutrient-dense food is really important. And while we do have access to great food if we just buy it, it's not necessarily nutrient-dense. And a lot of the challenges, health challenges we face, I believe, are because we're not getting organic, nutrient-dense produce. And the other thing that when you start to grow your own food, you become aware of is a flavour. You know, at this time of year, tomatoes are naturally ripening. Okay, they might be slow because it's been a cooler summer, but when you taste a tomato off the vine that is fully ripe, you know, your mouth has this explosion of flavour, which you simply don't get from those red cricket ball-like things that you get in the supermarket. You know, those they're called tomatoes, but there's been some labelling issue. You know, if you dropped them on the ground in the supermarket, you could kick it around a couple of laps, pick it up, put it back on the shelf, and there wouldn't be a blemish on it. I tell you what, if we grabbed one of the tomatoes on another bench in my kitchen and dropped it on the ground, I'd have a mess to clean up. So, you know, you get flavour. The other thing is ripeness. Things, when you actually get to harvest things when they're fully ripe. And knowing the seasonality of food is really important. And the other thing I love about growing your own produce is becoming a little bit more adventurous. So, you know, in one of those pictures on the screen there, we can see some white eggplants. You know, now I have a girlfriend that's quite traditional. She doesn't like it when I try and give her purple potatoes. I mean, purple flesh potatoes or yellow zucchinis or, you know, round zucchinis. You know, she likes the traditional vegetable. But I'm just fascinated by the diversity of things that we have. And I grow some weird and wonderful veggies, which, okay, Aussies mightn't know them, but you talk to people from other cultures and they revere them because, you know, it might have been a traditional food for them. So, you know, it sort of growing your own food goes across all socioeconomic backgrounds, and it also goes across all cultural backgrounds, and it brings us together and it helps us build common ground, which is really important. Now, so in terms of gardening to save ourselves, you know, we've got exercise, relaxation, health, and optimal nutrition. If we just scale our view out slightly and we go to the next slide, you know, once we're not only looking to save ourselves, we're looking to save our own backyards. And, you know, one of the most simple, important things we can do is just to make sure that we don't waste the green organics that our households produce. So, you know, at worst, put it in the green bin and let the council compost it. At best, do it in your own backyard through a worm farm or a compost system or a bokashi bin. But either way, we need to redirect those green organics because we don't want them going to the dump, because when they go to the dump, they break down and they produce methane, which has 21 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. So the simple act of composting is really profound too. If we can go to the next slide, you know, in terms of saving our backyards, planting, you know, any sort of planting, you know, it doesn't have to be native, it doesn't have to be exotic, it doesn't have to be food plants. Planting anything is really important. And there's something really profound that happens when you do plant stuff, is you get to see it grow. And that's inspiring as well too. Now, the next one, Sarah. Now, this is what I'm particularly passionate about is, you know, one of the biggest threats to wildlife around us is a lack of urban habitat. And every backyard, whatever the size, can become a biodiversity hotspot when we encourage the creatures to live with us. And, you know, whether it's the butterflies pictured or the little gecko or the praying mantis, you know, these creatures are amazing. And many years ago, Chris Daniels, who's the head of Green Adelaide, once said to me, you know, Sophie, not everyone gardens because they like gardening. He said some gardens because they like creatures, you know, they want to bring in the birds, the bees and the butterflies. And at the time I was stunned that not everyone would like gardening, but actually he's right. And, you know, if you're not necessarily into gardening, but you love butterflies, butterflies make your heart sing, or watching birds in a bird bath, you know, is the thing for you. Create a little, you know, whether it's a balcony, you can do it on a balcony, you can do it in a tiny courtyard, wherever you are, you know, bring in the good guys and try and create a habitat-friendly garden, and you'll feel fantastic. And then the next slide is showing, you know, that often we think of sustainability in terms of building design, but we don't realise that gardens actually can make our houses cooler through passive heating and cooling. And if you're only renting, you can actually use plants to cool your home, so you use less electricity, so you're using less power, so you're being more sustainable. And those plants that you use could even be plants that feed you. I'm passionate about a group of plants that I call vertical veggies, and they're veggies that we say plant in spring, and they grow up really rapidly and they create shade that can keep our homes cooler, give us a nicer space to live, make it more friendly for creatures to come in, but also they can feed us in the process. So, and, you know, the next slide, Sarah, if we could please, you know, so all of this beauty around us, everything we do in our gardens, we have to think in terms of is it sustainable, because we don't want to leave, you know, my goal is to leave the planet far better than it was when I came, you know, so whether that's by planting lots of trees, whether that's by gardening organically, you know, we want these little creatures like this ladybird who joined me while I was in my veggie patch, you know, so everything we do, we have to think, is it good for the creatures around us or is it bad? And if we all gardened to improve the planet, it would be a fantastic planet. Now I'm going to move along and talk about sharing. So the next slide, please. You know, one of the things that happens when we start to grow our own produce is invariably we have excess. And in the old days, it was really common that, you know, if you had too many apricots, you'd take a bucket to your neighbour. Now, unfortunately, many people don't know their neighbours. You know, it's a sad fact that, you know, the neighbourly aspect of community, of society, isn't as common as it used to be. But we can actually start that up again. And when you do have too much, you can share. And whether it's just literally, you know, knocking on your neighbour's door and saying, do you want some of this? I am told, though, I will put it in perspective, at the moment you can't see it, but the other end of my kitchen table has baskets of Whopper zucchinis. And I'm told in Italy there is one time of year where they're not hospitable and the doors are locked, and that's zucchini glut time because no one wants any more. So, you know, I will say that you can have too much of a good thing. But so in terms of sharing, now whether we share informally just by giving to our neighbours, or whether we, I just want to show the next slide. Last year, one of the organisations I'm involved with, or actually it wasn't last year, it was 2020, it was during COVID. So this is a company called Quality Training and Hospitality College, and they train international students to become chefs. And they have students from all over, from South America, from Asia, from India, from Italy. And COVID came along and all these students were over here. And I'm sure we all remember the panic buying and how scary it was. And you know, the general chaos and fear and not being able to get enough food. So all these students, at the time, they had 80 international students that were over here. They were all working part-time in the hospitality industry, so they all lost their jobs because restaurants and everything shut down. So there were 80 people far away from their home And I can't imagine how scary that would have been, right? And so they're here learning to become chefs, but suddenly everything shuts down. And I was due to have an open garden at Easter in 2020, and then I became aware that that wasn't happening. So as part of our open garden, I grow a lot of produce so that we can have food tasting and meals and all that sort of thing here prepared with my produce. So the chef that would usually do the cooking demos for me, she works at Quality Training and Hospitality College, and she contacted me and said, Sophie, what are you doing with all your produce? And I said, oh, well, I've been giving it away, but, you know, I don't really know. And we'll preserve a lot, we'll store what we can. She said, could we have some? Because we've decided that we're going to produce 8 meals a week for our students who are over here. And at the time, there was no financial assistance for these international students. So this college, who happened to run commercial kitchens out of the zoo and the showgrounds and other places, committed to supporting their students. And I just thought that was fantastic. And so for, I think it was about 3 or 4 months from autumn, they supported their students with these 8 meals a week, and I would deliver produce into their commercial kitchens. And, you know, that I felt so good about it because it gave me a purpose. Instead of going, oh, it doesn't matter if nothing produces properly, you know, I had a purpose. I wanted as much produce every fortnight or every week when I delivered to them as I possibly could. And, you know, there were countless examples of people supporting neighbours. But, you know, it doesn't have to be a formalised thing. It can just be, okay, there's an opportunity here. I can share and I can help. And I just love that story. ABC Radio did pick it up and talk about it too. And, you know, just the support it gave those students at a time when they were looking at, you know, they were looking in Italy at what was going on at home. And I just can't imagine how isolated and scary they must, you know, it must have been feeling. So we can do things like that. We can also, the next slide, please, Sarah, is actually showing an organised fruit and veg swap. Now, there are lots of these going on around the place. If you don't know about them, find out where they are. And the first time I ever attended one many years ago, I remember watching someone come up and someone tried to give him a punnet of seedlings, because it can be produce, it can be something you've made, it can be a bunch of flowers, it can be seeds, or it can be seedlings you've grown. And someone tried to give this person a punnet of seedlings, and they said, how much? And they said, no, they're free. Would you like them? And the person couldn't actually cope with that because they said, I haven't got anything to give. And the person on the stall said, that's okay, just take. You know, now we're a little bit more used to it. And there are these organised fruit and veg swaps. There are wonderful programs like Grow Free, which is now I can't remember their slogan, but it's something like, give what you can, take what you need, you know. And it's basically, there are these carts around Adelaide where you can leave excess produce. There are community centres. There are many food kitchens where you can donate produce. So I think sharing is really, really important. Now, the next thing I want to touch on, if we can have the next slide, is community gardens. Now, I am so fortunate that I have been able to visit lots of community gardens. And even when I travel interstate, when I used to travel interstate, you know, I would always be looking up, is there a community garden nearby that I can check out? Or there's one that I've heard about that I haven't been to. So I love visiting community gardens wherever we are. But these are two that are particularly close to my heart. The one on the left is one we built in response to the fires on Kangaroo Island. We actually built a pop-up community garden at Pandana with a view to providing produce to people on the western end who had lost not only their homes, but they lost their ability to grow food. And on the western end of Kangaroo Island, because they're a couple of hours from the shops, and then, you know, they're pretty isolated then anyway, food takes longer to get over there than it does for us. You know, it was about addressing food security. And so we built a pop-up community garden, and it's been hugely successful. And there have been some comments from people who lost their homes. And one of the interesting things is lots of people who lost their homes actually tell me they were more devastated about losing their garden than they were their home, because their garden was a living creature. Their garden fed them. Their garden was their solace. Their garden was the way they managed their stress. And so acknowledging that gardens are really important to support us has been, and me understanding how important they are, has been an interesting process. But there was one beautiful lady who has been a regular at this community garden, and there was a comment she made that her weekly, and this is someone that lost their home, their garden, they didn't lose everything because they never lost their hope, but they lost the things that they treasured in life. And her comment was that her weekly trip to the Pandana Community Garden was the single most important positive step to her mental health and well-being during what was a really tough time. And bear in mind, you know, it may be more than 2 years on, but there are still people over there that haven't got homes yet. And, you know, they still haven't got their homes rebuilt, or they still haven't started to replant their gardens. And the community garden on the right is a community garden that was already established in Kingscote, but it had sort of run out a bit of inspiration. It needed a bit of love, and it needed lots of organic matter. So we had a working bee with all those people there who came in and helped me, and in half a day we put all this energy and love and compost and mulch and fertilizer and everything into that soil. And that community garden gives produce to people that want it, and also the produce is shared through sort of a food kitchen type situation. It's run by Junction over there, the community centre, which is the grey building in the background. And so these community gardens are so important. And there are some councils that get it, and there are some councils that are learning, because community gardens aren't just about growing food, even though that often seems to be their purpose. They're actually about growing strong, healthy, resilient, connected communities. So they grow communities rather than just food. And if we can have the next slide, one of the things that has blown me away in the last couple of years is community spirit. And gardening tends to bring people together. And so because of what happened with people losing their gardens, and I had this desire to help, but I didn't know how, I thought, well, I'm connected in the nursery industry, and, you know, I can probably ask people to donate stuff. So, and then we can work out how we can best support people. So over the last 2 years, more than $100,000 worth of plants or seeds or freight or whatever has been donated to the regions of the Adelaide Hills and Kangaroo Island, which is extraordinary. And this is from an industry that already was flat out and didn't need to be supporting me. And me asking people is the easy bit. You know, the hard bit is then working out how we distribute this stuff, or we actually build the community garden. And the people that have come forward to help, you know, the picture on the left there, that was we had 6 days to build that community garden, including cage it to keep wildlife out. And, you know, there were so many times when you thought it would never come together, but that's on the last day where we had our celebration that we'd actually achieved it. And then COVID came and literally locked our state down. 2 days after we took this photo, everything basically got shut down. And, you know, the photo of us all together hugging was then politically incorrect 2 days later, because you had to have something called social distancing, which we didn't know about. And then we opened up in June. And so the middle photo was taken in June when Balhanna Nurseries, one of the local hills nurseries, made a commitment to me that they would donate fruit trees for KI, because they knew that food security was a thing. So over 2 years, they donated about 600 trees, and we took them over there. And the people in that photo were they were my A-team. They were extraordinary. They would turn up to help me sort these fruit trees. And there's a lady there, she's squatting in the photo. Her name's Anne Morrison. She was president of the Kangaroo Island Garden Club. She got Citizen of the Year on Kangaroo Island this year for all her efforts. So she would ask people what fruit trees they wanted, and we would help get those fruit trees to them. And the photo on the right is taken out at Recreate. And that's with another group of volunteers that was supporting the Adelaide Hills fire-affected community and distributing plants. So community spirit when times are tough is extraordinary. And it seems that gardening is this, it crosses all boundaries. People come together to support gardeners, and there were lots of people like the photo on the right, there were lots of people who started propagating. They said, I would hate it if I lost my garden. Why don't I take cuttings of what's in my garden and I'll donate the plants to people who have lost things. So the plant giveaways that were able to happen were just amazing. So I am totally biased. I think I'm very blessed to be in the gardening industry and to be able to connect with new people about the importance of gardening and reaffirm to existing gardeners that, getting out there. If you feel better because you've got out in your garden, it's the right thing to do. And just connect with your garden because, more grows in a garden than a gardener sows. So, gardening supports us. It's good for our backyards. It's good for our, suburbs and our communities. And it actually, if we all garden, it helps to save the world. So I might finish on that, Sarah. There is one last slide which has got my details should people want to follow up. There is a TED talk I did a few years ago. It's very brief. It's only 10 minutes and it's called Saving the World with Gardening. And, there's a lot of laughs through it, but I'm deadly serious because I'm totally biased and I think gardening is the solution to everything.
Thank you very much, Sophie. This is so lovely. And as someone who's just been introduced to the gardening world in recent years myself, I love seeing how it works from the individual and how it just kind of spreads to people beyond. And I really love the idea around how it connects community and people together. If anyone is out there that's really keen to kind of become connected more to their community through gardening, what would you recommend to be the first step or the first thing that they might do if they were interested in that and pursuing that?
Okay, well, so I would look at your local community garden. Right now, there's community gardens and there's community gardens. You want to find one where it feels like they're your people. And for example, next week, not this week, next week, a friend of mine has started up a community garden at the old Blackwood Hospital. Now it's called Cherrington House, and it's actually a therapeutic community garden. And she works with the Cancer Care Centre, and she runs gardening for health courses up there. So it's sometimes called Seeds for Health, and it's a 4-week course that you can tap into. And the first week they look at soil, the second week they look at, different things, and then the third week it's about habitat, and the fourth week it's what you plant that's seasonal. That's right, the second week is on how you build beds, But the thing is, you could go along and do a formal course like that and learn, and you'll be with people that want to reclaim their health. They've had a scare, which lots of us have had, and it makes you aware that you want to be careful of everything that goes into your body, and you want nutrient-dense organic produce that supports life and makes you feel good. And so you can do a formal course like that, or many community gardens just have a working bee on a set day, right? And you can just go along and be part of them. And the pool of knowledge in community gardens is extraordinary. And, like any community organisation, there'll be some that aren't functioning quite as well. When we've got people, there's always some challenges. But the community gardens that are vibrant and inclusive and they teach you and you become they become your tribe, that's a great way to learn. But if there's so much information out there. I'm on Gardening Australia, and we're a pretty diverse bunch of gardeners on Gardening Australia. We're all, not only are we diverse in terms of we're all around Australia, but the way we garden is totally different. On Gardening Australia, we've got Jerry Colby-Williams. He's my dear friend, but he's like the brainiac of the gardening team, and he's details, and he can tell you the specific ins and outs of anything. Now I garden, I'm a hack gardener really, there's no detail. I've got no attention to detail. You know, any rules, I will have broken them because, you know, I probably was running late or I was too busy. I'm also the mother of 5, you know, and so life has been really crazy. So I don't have a lot of time to garden. So when I garden, I hit it pretty hard. You know, it doesn't really matter. You just find the sort of gardening you want to do. And if you've never grown anything, you know, just get a pot and sow some seeds. One of the, there's been many profound moments working with the fire affected communities, and I feel incredibly privileged that I've had this opportunity to be with these groups and, you know, watching how they support each other, you know. So I've decided that I'll go over there and I'll do talks on how you start a patch from scratch or you know, how to deal with challenges in the garden. So I just go over there and I do a talk, and then the community comes together and they learn. But when I'm not talking, I'm looking at the people in the room and how they're supporting each other, and how they're there for each other and they're sharing stuff. And you know, gardening is amazing. And one of the comments quite recently, this beautiful young lady on KR, she lost her home, and in the early days I remember having a conversation with her on our hands and knees while we were planting veggies into a wicking bed. And, you know, we both had tears in our eyes, and we were talking about the loss of her garden, you know, and how she was more affected by the loss of the garden than her home. I've heard that from numerous people. But then recently she said to me, now on KI, a lot of the people that lost their gardens, they wouldn't even classify themselves as gardeners. They just grew food because they had to. It was a food security issue. If you want fresh produce on the island, you grow your own. And so she'd only ever grown food plants before. And she said to me, Sophie, it's okay to plant flowers, isn't it? It was like she was asking permission to grow something that was not edible, right? Because, you know, it was purely utilitarian gardening for her. Before, you want food, you grow it. You have to. And she said, it's okay to plant flowers, isn't it? And I said, oh, yes. And she was talking about, I'm choking up talking about, she was talking about how it was feeding her soul, you know, the beauty of the flowers. And it's not only about bodies, it's about watching a beautiful flower. It's about watching a bee, you know, busy itself. It's about, you know, listening to the birds, being out there, hearing the birds in the garden, you know, watching a butterfly. You know, if your heart is heavy and you watch a butterfly, your heart is no longer heavy. You know, it's nature is out there to support us at some of our lowest times if we just tune into it. And, you know, I find that, you know, even some of my lowest times, there'll be a little bird that just came in and it was being with me. And you know, if I can tune in on that, suddenly I'm not in that place anymore, and life's better. That was a bit heavy. Sorry.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. I do have one quick other question before I guess we wrap up today, and that's really you're talking about, you know, community gardens and the example around being a more inclusive place for anyone who's watching who is maybe not a gardener. It's maybe someone who just has their own little garden in their front patch of their house, or they are a formalized community garden or even a verge garden. What are some things that you might be able to suggest to them to make them more opening and welcoming? What makes a really good garden space or welcoming garden space in your view or in your experience?
You know, it's the people that the garden guardians. So when we set up the community garden at Pandana, I found, you know, it was this whole process because we managed to set it up within 2 months of the fire ending, right? And then we built it within a week. So everything was really fast tracked. But I was ringing someone on the island who found me space on the school grounds, and we could have separate entrances so people didn't need police clearances and all that sort of thing. And I said, well, we need a garden guardian to look after the garden. And she said, oh, I've got just the right people in mind, right? Now, across the road and down the street a little bit, there's this couple called Dennis and Marie Perkins. And Dennis is a really good gardener, and he just retired from looking after the Bowls Club. So he got dobbed in, right? I don't actually think he got a choice, and he just said, yep, I'm prepared to commit for a couple of years while people are getting their lives back on track. And his wife, Marie, so Dennis has got the gardening knowledge and he's just the most gorgeous bloke. But his wife, Marie, who is not a gardener, she's got a smile that just gives you a hug, right? And, you know, it's people like that. It's Dennis and Marie, who I call the garden guardians, that they make everyone feel good, right? They're like the garden angels of that garden, and they have put a lot of time in. They've been over there most days checking on it. But if someone, you know, if one of the fire affected community who sometimes they didn't want to see people, right? You know, they'd had enough of meetings, they'd had enough of indoors and all that sort of thing. You know, if they went there, you know, Marie's smile would warm their heart, you know. So it's the people that are the coordinators that are extraordinary, and yeah, so you know, it is about people, and you don't have to be a good gardener. You know, you've just got to have a care for people in your heart, and you know, and it can be an informalised. So lots of people just, you know, out the back of a block of flats will say, look, we've got a bit of bare space, why don't we put a garden bed in, you know, and work out how you can do that and grow that, and whether it's just for the butterflies, you know, or whether it's you want to grow some produce, you know. And I think you got to love people. I think that's the key.
Thank you. That's a very important message, I guess, when it comes to community, liking people. It's interesting how many people I've met that have spoken and are self-proclaimed introverts, yet have done so much to bring people together and put themselves out there over their love of joining through the garden, or with butterflies, or with bumblebees, or with just sharing things, sharing produce or other things that they've grown or created themselves. So it's a lovely icebreaker, gardens. It gives people something to talk about and to share. And so it's real lovely. And so I do want to, I guess, close up. You were such an open person, and you're so inviting. I heard a story of someone once who emailed you about their pear tree, and you responded about what was the issue. So if people do want to get in touch, are they happy to visit your Instagram page and Facebook, which is great that we hear. And also we were talking about the Sophie, your open garden, the last open garden of this year, happening Easter time, which I guess maybe give people a few minutes to tell them what that's all about.
It's Easter Saturday to Monday, and it's sort of, so not only can you walk around the garden, and you know, my garden is not perfect, you will see weeds. If you're here and you see weeds, feel right at home, feel free to pull them out. You know, you'll see some areas where there's pests and diseases. You know, it's a 2-acre garden. I'm a busy person. It's certainly not a perfect garden, but it feeds us and it feeds a lot of other people. And and you can actually trial the produce. So we'll have a sweet tasting box with 3 different cakes made from my produce, and we'll have savoury tasting bowls too. But the thing about my garden that I think we go to the trouble of labelling everything. So we label all the plants. So if you're walking around, you go, I love that plant, you can take a photo of the plant, and then you know what it is and you can find out about it. We also have 3 nurseries here who are the nurseries I deal with. We have Tupelo Grove, Bickley Vale Organic Farm, and Hillside Herbs and Succulents. And they're here and they're selling the plants. And if you need information about whether that plant's suitable in your garden, they can give it to you. And we also have the societies here that I'm involved with. So we have the Beekeepers Society of South Australia, I'm their patron. We have Butterfly Conservation Society, and we have Birds SA. And these are environmental organisations that are passionate about creating habitat in our backyards, urban backyards, and how easy it is to do. And then we also have Recreate, which is we could have a talk about Recreate as a community thing. You know, it's a fabulous organisation up at Mount Pleasant. It does recycling. They do all sorts of upskilling. And so we have all these organisations here. We have free kids activities every day. They're different, whether they're nature craft or bug education. So it's really about information and inspiration, and it's in a garden setting. And the thing that happens, you're in a garden, I love watching people because people smile because they see something of beauty or they see something that's funny. My garden's got lots of quirky things in it too. But I love watching people as they walk around with a smile on their face, because for that moment, you know, they could have all this stuff going on in their lives. You know, I know life throws a lot at us, even without the worldwide stuff that's going on. And, you know, to be in a garden for that window can make people smile and give them happiness and give them information and inspiration. And so it will be our last open garden. This is our 15th open garden here. We've had the property for just over 10 years. And we are looking at the next chapter. So, you know, it'll be watch this space. There will be more gardens. but we just need a bit of a break at the moment.
That's fair. I have gone to many of your open gardens, and it's quite a feat of organizing, but it's beautiful, very inspirational. And I am one of those people that have signed up to lots of those different organizations and visited the Recreate stall. So I look forward to it again this Easter. But thank you so much, Sophie, for taking the time to speak to us today. I know that there might be some people who are really keen and have some more questions for you that might come through during the summit. So, and in the chat box. So we'll be sure to keep you posted on those as they come through. But thank you again for taking the time to speak with us today.
Pleasure, Sarah.
Thank you again to Sophie Thompson for speaking with us on the benefits of being in nature and gardens to benefit one's own physical health as well as a role within the community. So a really key message that I saw from this was, even if you're, as some people say in the chat box, a brown thumb, it's really just around having that shared goal, that shared purpose that brings people together. And in Sophie's case, the garden and the gardening community is a really great one and a great source of that. And I know many examples of some community gardens where some people speak about not actually being a gardener, but they have other roles that they play on the boards or in the committees that really support each other and just encourage people's values and different skills to be recognized. And a favorite quote I'm going to take away is, more it grows communities rather than just food. So that's something that I hope that a message that people can take away that reminds us of the power of being out, being present in our communities, being involved and being engaged in aspects or things where you can meet others who feel the same and who share the same interests and passions as you do. So before we I turn this to a lovely woman named Jane Barrett to provide closed reflections, I'd like to remind just some of the participants of the project output from the Neighbourhood Circles project, particularly if you've only joined us throughout different stages of today, that we hope will help in your journey of inclusion moving forward. So just to recap, an important highlight is the Inclusive Neighbourhoods website, which will include a link to the chat box as well. And this is developed by Julia Farr, Purple Orange, and it's a great resource for people to check out some case study examples, some different initiatives that exist across Adelaide, as well as provide a little bit of inspiration and support for your inclusion journey. And on this website are our really important Part 1 and Part 2 neighbourhood mapping reports, which highlight some key findings of the past 12 months of the project. And there's some really lovely examples of different initiatives, some of which have been spoken about today, that are included within these 2 reports. So please do take the time to read through them. I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoyed being able to write them and be involved in them, and as much as I enjoyed being able to meet all the people who contributed to them. There's also a tip sheet, an infographic poster that you can print off on the website. It's an A3 poster you can put up in your community group. And we also have, as Jody mentioned, great bookmarks for little libraries, if you are one, some of these smaller versions that you can stick in as a bookmark or a little reminder or on your post board or fridge. And they just provide a few little guides around some things you can think about day to day around inclusion and accessibility. And lastly, moving forward, we really encourage people to check out our survey, please. We have 4 key questions that we're asking people after today and moving forward that are important to the project. The first 2 I've put on the screen there now, and this really is around, what would you see, what does your group do currently, to encourage inclusion and access? What might you do well? What are some key messages or some take-home things that you might action as a group moving forward, or some things that you might do to bring somebody vulnerable in after today? There's also questions 3 and 4. It's really around what might be helpful for you in your group, in your journey to being accessible moving forward. This is really important for us to know what we might be able to do to support neighbourhood groups or individuals around Adelaide in their journey to build inclusive neighbourhoods. And the last one is really just some extra feedback around moving forward. So we really encourage you just to take as long as you want. They're completely anonymous responses. If you want to be highlighted, you can mention your name or your group's name in any of the comments or the feedback. But if you prefer to be kept anonymous, then that's okay too. And we'll share this survey link with others after today. And lastly, moving forward, we also have some roundtable networking events, which I'll be hosting, and I'll be inviting everyone who's participated or joined today to join us in a series of different in-person networking events. So we're hoping to host about 4 across different geographic areas of Adelaide at the end of the month or throughout April. And these will provide opportunities for neighbourhood leaders, champions, other people who just want to get involved to actually get together and meet each other and brainstorm and even talk about some of these questions that are in the survey. So we're hoping that people to see you in person at some of these initiatives moving forward. So stay tuned and look at your inbox in the future for invitations to join us for these. So before we move to the last lovely recap from Jane, we'd like to show just one quick video as well. We won't show the whole thing. And it's from my own home country of Canada. It's from a place in Alberta, Edmonton, the city of Edmonton. And they've done this wonderful initiative around building inclusive neighborhoods. And the message in it, I would hope people take away, is something around finding, spaces and encouraging connections between neighbors and the importance of recognizing neighbors and helping one another and the benefits that can come through that. So I hope you enjoy this quick video before we come back and do our close and recap of the day.
As a society, everybody just kind of goes home and sits in their house. Everybody's so busy.
We have lost the connection that was in the neighborhoods back when I was growing up.
We don't get out and talk to each other as much as previous generations used to do. I think that this initiative is so important because it brings people together in a way that maybe might not naturally happen anymore.
Why is it that a good neighbor is someone that you never hear from, or they keep themselves and you keep to yourself? Abundant Communities is challenging that, and it's a good thing.
Abundant Community Edmonton is a framework that enables neighbors to connect with one another. So this is a way of just giving permission to have somebody on the block to introduce themselves, maybe introduce neighbors to one another.
I think the block connector role is very important. They organize events, they meet people, and they give that opportunity for neighbors to come together and making sure that they know there's someone to help them if they need it.
Abundant communities is really important in any community, but it's especially important in high density. In high density, you're surrounded by so many people, you run into them every day, you're living one on top of the other. It's my job to identify blocks, or in high density's case, buildings, and find people who are willing to act as building connectors. So people who are willing to go and knock on their neighbors' doors and have a chat about their interests, their vision for the neighborhood, and hopefully act as kind of the point person in the building.
Being me from South America, I'm usually more social than other people, so for me getting to know my neighbors is important. You never know when you have a new family coming that doesn't have any natural supports, or because you have seniors that they still live by themselves. The creation of those natural supports through the connections that the abandoned community gives to the community is the most important in society.
My yard sharing started because I had heard so much about people wanting community gardens.
So we had a plot in her backyard that she hadn't been able to garden for quite a number of years. I eagerly raised my hand and said, I'd love to do it.
It's been a bigger success than I had expected. We got along really, really well, and they work hard to do it. And I have benefited as well as they have.
The hour or two that I spent a week weeding or just maintaining the garden meant the world to both of us for the summer, because we had fresh produce all summer long.
In the old days, when you were out in your yard and growing the garden, you talked to the neighbors over the fence, they walked down the lane, they checked out what you were growing, and it helped to build friendships and for people to know each other and trust each other. I wouldn't have met Sheila and Andy had I not gone and connected with Bubba with this garden, and they live 3 blocks away, and it's wonderful.
Hey, Eder. Good, how are you? I always think of Macaulay as a complex neighborhood. When people ask what part of the city I'm from, and I say Macaulay, it usually turns into a whole conversation. To me, block connecting is just taking day-to-day moments to connect with people one-on-one and just literally connecting with them. I had set up a table before with like hot chocolate and tea and stuff. I will take that opportunity to go up and introduce myself. Like for my neighbor a couple doors down, he's from the outside. It's one of these houses that people have assumptions about, that it doesn't look extremely welcoming, it's an old fence and it seems a bit run down. But then we walked up and knocked on the door a little bit hesitantly, not knowing who was going to come out, and we meet like the nicest guy. You know, Abundant Communities gives this opportunity to get to know your neighborhood at a very local level. I don't know, I think a part of Abundant Communities is taking those risks too, and being confident to know that you're in a safe community and it's okay to go and talk to your neighbors, and it'll be fine.
Great, thank you everyone. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of the video of from the city of Edmonton around neighbors and neighborhoods, and I hope that the North American accents also complemented my own. So to close today's summit, I would like to introduce a wonderful colleague, mentor, and friend, Jane Barrett, who will do a recap of some of the messages and highlights from today, as well as some important thank yous before we go our respective ways. So Jane Barrett is a director with the Community Living Project for many, many years with their micro enterprise project, as well as their Circles of Support initiative. And she's among many other roles that she has taken on her life. And over the past 12 months, Jane has been a key player, mentor, and support for the Neighbourhood Circles project. As a member of the steering committee and one of the initial brains behind the project, Jane, along with Prue Gorman from CLP, have acted as critical sources of support and guidance for me personally over the past 12 months. So it seems only fitting that Jane should provide the summary and closing for today's event. So I thank you all for your participation in today's summit. This will be the last you see of me. I know you're all very happy about that. So I humbly introduce you all to Jane, who will formally close today's event.
So thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to everybody who's joined us as well. It's been really wonderful to see all the comments coming through in the boxes, in the chat box. Other ideas about welcoming places, etc. So that's been all wonderful to see. Oh, great, you can hear me. So I've just got that message, I wasn't sure. Neighbourhood circles did come about because of, and the name circles came about because of a lot of the work that I've done with circles of support over the years. And one of the things about circles of support, I suppose, methodology is about being prepared to invite and ask people to be involved. And so for me, it was a big part of thinking about neighbourhoods and connecting people to their neighbourhoods and their neighbours and community groups and associations. And thought the whole notion of people being prepared to ask and invite was a really big message to put out there. So as we've heard from all of the speakers on our panels, etc., too, that, you know, there is a piece about people having shared interests. So, and inviting people who are vulnerable or not connected into sharing interests that they have in their community or with their neighbours. So we've heard things today presented about, you know, people who enjoy reading and borrowing books. We've heard a lot about gardening, which is a really big interest that a lot of people have. We've heard about singing as an interest, having a coffee, hanging out at a cafe, just some of the things, some of the interests that people have talked about through our panel discussions. Sarah mentioned the report that you will all be getting a copy of. It's very rich in identifying a whole lot of community interest groups, a lot of neighbourhood initiatives. And I think too, not forgetting that just individual neighbours can invite people to become more neighbourly or to take on roles. And Helen, when she talked about Tom's circle of support and her efforts in their street, it was very much talking about some of the things that had come from getting to know neighbours. So it's a really important part of the work of circles of support and now neighbourhood circles to think in context of inviting and asking people. We've heard from a whole lot of wonderful leaders and champions in neighbourhoods and communities as well. It is often those people who are the people who perhaps have the courage or find somewhere in their capacity to start an initiative or do an invite to people. Jodie Moat spoke about just having something out on her footpath was an invitation to people to connect. The wonderful messages that Barry shared with us, and one of my big takeaways from, and I think most of the speakers had said something similar, that their effort, whatever the focus is drawing people to an interest, but it becomes 30% about the shared interest and 70% about the people and the connections. And I think that's a really good reminder to think about what does keep us connected, what does build us into relationship with people. I think too, one of the other messages from today, and probably from the work that Sarah, the wonderful work that Sarah's been doing over this last year and has written about, has also been thinking about how for those people who are more vulnerable because of disability or mental health, how some of us who support them, both either in paid roles or in non-paid roles, might do really well by thinking of ourselves as a bridge for those people, a bridge to connect them to others in community, or a bridge to help connect those people to shared interest groups and other efforts that people are involved with in their communities. Again, Sophie's comment about a care for people in your heart. I suppose with the Circles Initiative, I learnt very early on that probably out of the people we invited to become involved in someone's life, someone vulnerable's life, something that initially I thought, oh goodness, are people going to say no? Is this going to be too difficult to invite, to ask people? And I was shocked myself in that probably 90% of people who are invited in or asked to be involved actually say yes. And so it's a wonderful thing. You know, there are so many people who, and I saw somebody on the chat box talk about most of us have a need to be needed. That's for both vulnerable people and for people who perhaps are not considered vulnerable. So there's been a rich learning, I think, through listening today. I know it has brought a smile to my face listening to the stories from the panelists, and likewise in reading through Sarah's reports and the documents coming from the Neighbourhood Circles project. It's a joy to read, and I commend it to you. It's not a hard read either. So as that becomes available to you, please do take the time to work through it and enjoy it. There's lots of thank yous from today as well. And so thank you to our Premier. Even though we didn't necessarily get to hear his welcome to the event, we're pleased that he was happy to do that welcome, and equally as pleased that he thought that this project was worthy to put some funding in to enable us to do this. Julia Farr Purple Orange and the funding from the MacLeod Benevolent Trust has been also a really great a piece that's actually help, I suppose, validate a whole lot of feelings, and for me, knowledge about how we can do better at connecting people, and to have the faith that this project would actually identify some of those things. Just reflecting a little again on a couple of comments. You know, Jodie's comment was, if you want to start something, just do it small. Think about what's manageable and it will grow. And you don't have to have all the answers yourself, because in fact, the people who you invite in will have ideas. The other thing that I think is reflected here too is that in any endeavour, there are many, many different tasks. And while not all of us might be able to complete all of the tasks, or want to complete all of the tasks, there will be tasks that people want to do and can do. I thought Brenton, with one of his comments about he'd met a whole lot more people whose names he now knew, and people who had shared their phone numbers with him. And he said he's really having great fun with those people. And so, you know, they're reflections of where someone is being connected in to be valued for who they are and their contributions they can make. I think too, I'm really thankful to Barry Sirwell and Brenton for giving us the time to be involved in the interview, for Jodie Mott from the little library on Lloyd Street, from Anne Van Malen from the Pear neighbourhood node. And in fact, the Pear was one of the first places that we actually visited and saw real connection and welcome to community. And so it was wonderful to hear a bit more about the Pear. Likewise, once you hear about one place, you hear, and we've seen on the chat box, other people talking about other cafes or other gardens or other efforts where people are welcoming newcomers and people's involvement. So the more of these efforts we can highlight around community and neighbourhoods, the better. And it talked a lot about being an advocate for people, and was very focused, or not focused, but shared a bit about not naming a circle of support, but seeing, after Helen having spoken about the circle of support that she's involved with around her son, that in fact, yes, that's what she needed and what she had worked on for a whole lot of years to help her feel safe and secure in community. I think that we've covered a rich array of all sorts, and there's probably much, much more that we could cover. Please note that you have been given the Inclusive Neighbourhoods website, a really rich place to log into and have a look, have an explore. And if you have any other efforts, ideas and thoughts that you think could be included on the Inclusive Neighbourhoods website, please make contact about that. You know, there, and I'm just got random thoughts going through my mind. One of the other big things that we thought of in the beginning was the park runs that happen all over the world, in fact, and invite anyone to come at a certain time. I think they're Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. And while called a park run, you know, a lot of people just walk or wheel. You see dogs, you see prams, you see all sorts of people doing the 5K fun run on Saturday mornings. And it's a worldwide effort. My daughter, who lives in London, does park runs, and they're all around our state and country. So park runs is another much more organised effort. There are cafes that I know of in my local area, one on Marion Road called Once and Again, who welcomes people and has extra welcoming efforts. So they're alive and well, and we can't name them all, but these are just random things that are coming to my mind at present. I think Annette Holden made the comment about people will notice when you're not there. So if you become a regular attender in being involved, or even a regular person out on your front veranda or walking in the neighbourhood, perhaps doing dog walks, you actually do see people and keep meeting them and bumping into them. And Sarah did quite a bit of writing about and did some research, and it's covered in this document again, that's about smiling and nodding to people as the first point of connecting with people, perhaps as you're walking by or they walk by your home. And so these are the welcoming things that our neighbours and we can do in being neighbourly. I think probably another piece to encourage you to do is Sarah's talked about the survey, and we'd love you to actually go back to or go on to and complete that survey. It will be available for another 2 weeks, and if any of you have done projects before, you know how rich it is to have feedback from others. We are hoping that there might be another project in the wind in the future. And so some of the survey, and Sarah's also commented on running a few focus group chat groups to talk with people about what we might do as another project. And of course, the next project we would hope is going to focus on how we can continue on from where we've got to with this project. I think that's probably all from me. It's nearly 3 o'clock. I thank everybody for attending and for joining us and contributing. The chat box has been really busy, and that's been lovely. It's very strange not doing these things face to face. This would have been very different had it been a face-to-face event. But thank you, not but, and thank you very much for your time and comments, and hopefully we will see you again somewhere in the future. So finally, to Sarah, thank you heaps and heaps for being such a really, really great lead for this project. We could not have chosen a better person for the work, and for your writing and your style and your charisma and your charm. It's just brought, as well as your absolute belief and fundamental interest in neighbourliness and community and belonging. We've had a steering group that sat behind this project, and on that steering group has been Robbie Williams from JFA Purple Orange, Sky, and I'm going to have to look how to pronounce her name, and I'll look harder, Sky, sorry, and John Brayley, who's been on the committee, Prue Gorman, and myself. So it's Ross Womersley from SACOS. So the steering committee has guided this project, and will be very interested to see what the next step is for where to from here. Thank you very, very much to everybody. And on that note, I shall say goodbye and take care. Please ask and invite. Bye-bye.